A Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash starts now on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there, what's going on, everybody, on a Tuesday? Hopefully you're enjoying it. It's a hot one out there. Hopefully you're not listening in the areas that have been completely flooded out. I know our Phillies insider, Frank Close, had some flooding issues. He'll join us at 2:40 today to talk a little bit about the Phils at the midway point, his Phillies mailbag. You can check that out over at 973ESPN.com. All the coverage on the Major League Baseball draft. We'll get into that. Plus, later on, the ESPN poll of personnel continues on the running backs today. We were wondering if Miles Sanders would make the poll, would make the list. Well, find out. Go to 973ESPN.com. Was he in the top 10? Did he even get a mention? Zeke Elliott, Saquon Barkley, the NFC East. Check it out now on our website, 973ESPN.com. The Flyers today, they had a press conference. We'll talk about it with Kevin Durso in the 3 o'clock hour. Jeff Nadeau is here. Andrew DeCecco, our coverage of the NFL divisions. Our previews continue for football at 4. Cam Rogers on the Open Championship. Paul Hudrick as well tonight. We'll get his thoughts on, I guess, which is where we should start today. This Ben Simmons news that recently came out about an hour or so ago, maybe a little bit earlier, a little while earlier than that. Ben Simmons' name has come up again, and you can only imagine where this will lead. The fans right now saying, get him out of here, ready for him to go. The Sixers have opened up trade conversations involving Ben Simmons and have engaged with teams. That, according to Shams over at The Athletic. He notes that interest across the league in Simmons remains robust, but that teams that have engaged with the Sixers about Simmons have been met with a high price threshold. So there's so much to dissect here. There is so much to kind of break down just in those two comments right there. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. When I tell you that the Sixers have engaged with teams about Simmons but have been met with a high price threshold, one. And number two, the fact that the league, interest across the league has been robust. Mark Stein, who covered the NBA for years for ESPN and the New York Times, he also adds that there are multiple teams that have already been linked to a trade, including Cleveland, Indiana, Minnesota, Sacramento, and that Toronto is also said to have expressed interest, and more are ready to engage. People, I know you might not like Ben Simmons. I know that you think his value is all the way at the bottom. I got news for you. Most NBA talent evaluators don't care what Steve in Summers Point has to say, or Nick in Northfield, or anybody else in our region, because quite frankly, they don't agree with you when it comes to Ben Simmons. You might not care, but the Sixers are not going to give Ben Simmons away. They're just not going to do it. So whether you're done with him or not, the Sixers are not going to give him away. In fact, one source was quoted in the article as saying, quote, the Sixers want an all-star caliber player in return. So their evaluation of Ben Simmons is a lot different than your evaluation of Ben Simmons. And so it should be, by the way. He is a 25-year-old, multiple-time all-star who is 25 years old. He's an all-NBA team member. He's a two-time all-defensive first team member, and he's under contract through 2025. I know people out there are going to say he's this, he's that. All I know is what he is high, very highly thought of. Again, you might not like him. You might think this, that, or the other thing. I'm just telling you what NBA people think of him. I have sat next to the scouts. I have talked to these people. They don't agree with you. So you can tell me all you want. He's this, he's that, he's the other thing. Fine, that's your opinion. I'm just telling you what inside league circles they see and think. They don't care that he doesn't shoot the ball. They don't care about the things you care about. They value what he brings in all areas of the game, not just one area of the game. So that is why you're going to be frustrated when I tell you that there is a lot of interest in him. Now, you shouldn't be frustrated by that. You should be happy. But there's a certain level of person out there that hopes that the Sixers can't get anything for Ben Simmons. They are going to get, I said this to my buddy. We were having this conversation. He hates Simmons. He wants him gone. He thinks he stinks. And I'm not questioning that aspect. You're entitled to think what you want to think about him. All I said to him was, if the Sixers decide they want to trade Ben Simmons, they are going to get a haul. And he said, there's no way. Did you see his playoffs? I said, yeah, I did see his playoffs. And guess what? They are going to get a haul. If they want to trade Ben Simmons, they are going to get a haul. When they traded Charles Barkley, they didn't get a haul. They got a U-Haul, a little mini one. They got Jeff Hornacek, Andrew Lang, and Tim Perry. The Sixers are not going down that road again when they trade the franchise player. Now, Ben Simmons is not, quote-unquote, the franchise player, but he is highly visible part of this organization. And when we talk about what the process was and what it meant, you guys bitch and moan because you think it was about winning championships. I'm here telling you it was a business decision, and business is booming. The process was a business plan. You bought into it, whether you knew it or not. You might not like the results on the court. It was never about on the court results. It was about you buying tickets and bringing people back to 76ers basketball. Grand slam home run. Ben Simmons is the face of most of that. Joel Embiid is the face of most of that. Now, a lot of people from that era are gone. Scott O'Neal is now gone. He is out of the organization. So I think the ties to Ben Simmons can be loosened, but you're going to have to knock their socks off. You are going to have to knock their socks off. You know, forget the fact that somebody said no mention about Ben Simmons at the ESPYs. Go check the website. There's an article up on the website about Ben Simmons. Yeah, they made a joke about Ben Simmons building houses with bricks and that he built houses with his shots. Who cares? We know he doesn't shoot free throws very well. Is that breaking news? Are you like breaking news that Ben Simmons doesn't shoot free throws well? Wow, that's a new one, man. Thanks for playing. Thanks for the information. We all missed. It was a national headline. The video and the story is up on our website. So have as much fun. I've blasted him as much as anybody. He was horrible, horrific, horrifically horrendous in the playoffs. He was horrible, horrific, horrendous, and absolutely unacceptably bad in the playoffs. You can have as much fun at his expense that you want, and I'll pile on with him. It's not about what I think. You keep trying to come after me because I don't hate Ben Simmons. I'm just telling you what the league thinks about him. I'm just telling you what the league thinks about him. Not what I think about him, what the league thinks about him. There are teams knocking on the door trying to figure out how they can get Ben Simmons. And guess what? You guys always think about trades in terms of making the team better. There are teams. Did you notice the teams? Do a little bit of thinking here. Did you notice the teams that Mark Stein brought up? Cleveland, Indiana, Minnesota, Sacramento, Toronto. What do they all have in common? They cannot attract a free agent to play in their Midwestern city. They cannot attract a free agent to come to Sacramento. They cannot attract a free agent to go to Toronto. So what do they need to do? Wow, This team is willing to trade a player who is a multiple-time All-Star, a All-NBA player, a Defensive Player of the Year, and we can get him to come to our team? Where do I sign? You can hate Simmons' game all you want, and you're entitled to. I'm giving you the information that's inside the league, not from Joe in Summers Point or Phil in Northfield. Yeah, I get it. All you guys think he stinks. All you guys thinks he can't shoot. All you guys are embarrassed that he can't make a free throw. That's great. They don't care what you think. Indiana's saying, how do I get a guy to come to Indiana? I can't get a free agent. I'm not drafting high enough in the draft. How do I do it? Philadelphia is willing to trade that guy. I'll take him. You guys as fans always think about wins and losses, which is fine. That's why you're a fan. You only care about wins and losses, which is all you should care about. I'm here to give you the real story. Cleveland, Indiana, Minnesota, Sacramento, and Toronto, they don't care about wins and losses as much as you do. They're wondering, how can I fix my business? And my business doesn't have any interest in it right now. Nobody cares about the Pacers. Nobody cares about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Nobody cares about the Minnesota Timberwolves. And nobody cares about the Sacramento Kings. So how can I gain some interest in my team? I have an idea. How can I get a 3-time All-Star, a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and a third-team All-NBA player? That will gain some more interest in my team. And the Sixers understand that your business needs the same shot in the arm that my business needed. So what did we do as a business? We lost games on purpose so we can get players that people care about. Enter Joel Embiid, enter Ben Simmons. And what happened? They sold the building out every single night. Indiana, Cleveland, Minnesota, and Sacramento are not selling out the building every single night. And I guarantee you they have significantly less interest in their team than Philadelphia does. So why are teams going to start lining up? Because they can't figure out another way to get a superstar. And you might not think he's a superstar, but guess what? This is a business, and Ben Simmons sells more jersey than Colin Sexton and Bogdanovich and De'Aaron Fox do. And Karl Anthony Towns. Look, not everybody is in the business of winning a championship because it's not realistic if you're Indiana. It's not realistic if you're Minnesota, and it's certainly not realistic if you're Sacramento. And unless you want to tank away seasons, which is, one way to go about getting a superstar, the only other way to get one is to call the Sixers right now. So you might not think he's a superstar player, but he's a superstar at the box office. And for most of these teams, that's what it's about. 609-403-0973. Mike, you're dead wrong when you say the process was only about being relevant and making money. No, I'm not. It is 100% was about rejuvenizing the fan base. They have to tell you you're an idiot. They have to tell you that it's about winning championships. Otherwise, what are they supposed to do? Come out and say, hey, we're going to do something that's a business plan to rejuvenate interest in our franchise. Of course they have to come out and say, you say the Knicks make more money. You're talking about the Knicks. Did you ever see a Sixer game before the process? Nobody went and nobody cared. Nobody went and nobody cared from the time Allen Iverson left to the time Joel Embiid showed up. So get a clue and scram, because you know that as well. You're comparing them to the Knicks. Come on, Dodo Bird. You sound like an idiot. What are the Sixers supposed to do? Come out and say the process was supposed to be a business plan? They can't say that. They can't say that. Come on. They have to come out and say, hey, we're going to do this to try to win championships, because they're talking to the lowest common denominator. You can't say to people, hey, we're out here trying to change our business so you'll buy more jerseys. Yeah, that's going to go over real well. 609-403-0973. Glenn and EHC. What's up, man?
Yo, Mike, the thing about Ben Simmons is, right now he's box office. Right now, for whatever reason, he's sold himself as some box office guy. But, Brandon Frazier at some point was box office too. And then at some point, he's going to be coming off the bench soon, Mike. I don't know how many years it'll be. If he keeps coming with the game he's coming with, he'll be coming off the bench in a couple of years in a supporting role. But real quick, Mike, before I get there, I wanted to ask you, I thought I heard Todd Rank and Pete Thompson both call Giannis Giannis. I'm trying to wonder why you would allow them to do that.
I hear people on the national broadcast call him that. I hear it half and half.
Giannis, I don't hear anyone with credibility call him Giannis.
I heard it the other night. I heard it the other night on the TNT broadcast. Somebody called him that.
He sound like a clown, and that person sounds like a clown, Mike. Come
I'm
on.
just saying.
Nobody calls him that.
I've heard it from people. I'm just saying. I've heard it from people. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying I've heard people who call him both.
And they sound like clowns, Mike. Let's be honest.
All right, well, who cares? You don't like the way they say it.
That's not the way it's pronounced. That's just how it is. What do you mean it's not? You know what I'm saying? It's not that I don't like it. It's wrong.
Yeah.
Why would you allow your boys to sound like clowns? Pete and Todd. Let them know that that's not right, man.
I told him that he says it wrong, and his answer was the same I just gave you, because I heard the guy say. He said, well, that's not what they said on the broadcast. They called him Giannis on the broadcast. And I actually heard the guy call him that, because I said there's no way. And I actually heard the guy call him that.
Well, he called it because he calls him that. Doesn't make it right, Mike?
I'm just saying it doesn't mean that who gives a crap what the guy's calling him, quite frankly.
I'm just saying because it doesn't sound good. If you're saying that, it makes you sort of sound like a clown when we know in the sports landscape that the guy's name is Giannis. We know that. It's not even, to me, debatable. Because someone you hear on TNT say it, that doesn't make it right. And to allow your boys to pronounce it Giannis, to me, it's just wrong for you. I wouldn't let my boys do it.
Well, then you go hang out with your boys, Glenn, and I'll hang out with my boys.
I'm with you, but you shouldn't. Why would you let your boys pronounce it wrong?
They can say what because I don't really care. I don't care what they say. I don't care how they pronounce a guy's name.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, I guess you don't care. Just don't care if they sound like clowns. I'm with you. I'm totally with you. But the thing about the NBA, they're not all these teams aren't run by Einsteins. Remember, somebody took Greg Oden over Durant. You know what I'm saying? Just because they don't listen to us don't mean that we're any wrong. Those guys are just guys who run teams.
I'm not, but I said, Glenn, it's not about you being right or wrong. What I'm saying is that's not how they think. Whether they're right or wrong is inconsequential. I'm saying inside that world, they think differently than the fans do. It's not about you look at it as Ben Simmons is not a winning player. They look at it not as a winning or losing player. The teams I just mentioned, they know they can't compete. They got to find a way to get a player there that can sell tickets. That is a business decision. If you're trading for Ben Simmons, it's not to improve your team as much as it is to improve your ticket sales.
That's a whole nother valid point, Mike. I totally agree with you. If that's the way they're looking at it, no question about it. But you're going to get a haul for him because his contract dictates that. You know what I'm saying? The way the NBA's set up, they have to get something in equal value. So you're going to get a haul for him because the way he's being paid, right?
Well, and that's what I said. Well, first off, right, because of his contract, you have to match the contract. So you got to get a player who's got that much money. But in the end, look at the teams that are interested. Indiana, Cleveland, Minnesota. What do they all need? They have unless they want to keep tanking and drafting high and finding a player in the draft, which a lot of people don't like, they have to find a way to get someone that's going to draw people to want to go to watch their games.
That's a valid point. I could see that being a reason for teams wanting to do it, because to improve their team, I'd have to question that from them if they think that's going to improve their team in certain aspects, I guess, on defense. But to overall, to say he's going to improve your team, you're not going to give up Lillard for him. I mean, that would be crazy to me. I can't even think that, but can't even believe that would even be a thought.
Right. Well,
I mean, other teams I can see, the teams you named.
Indiana, Cleveland, Minnesota, Sacramento, Toronto.
Exactly. That would definitely be a business decision. Absolutely.
Yep.
And that's a valid point.
Yeah, and appreciate the call, Glenn. Yeah, I mean, look, that's what I'm saying. I said it's not about, to me, the Sixers did not do what they did to say, hey, we're trying to win championships. Of course they're trying to win championships. Everybody's trying to. But the Sixers were a nothing. They were an insignificant blip. Nobody cared. They had to do something to get people back in that building. Text message, $60 lower level seats with Evan Turner and Spencer Halls. Now you can't find $60 tickets on any level. Business is booming. It's a sellout every night. A sellout every night at a Sixer game. From 2000, whenever Allen Iverson got traded to the time Joel Embiid, nobody cared. Nobody wanted to go to a Sixer game. Nobody cared. Now that place is filled every night. Over on the text board, 609-403-0973. Mike, Ben Simmons is one of the league's greatest temp pushers, and a lot of these teams, whether they want him to play point guard or power forward or whatever, he can push the ball up the court and make fast break plays out of transitions. On top of that, come on, he was basically Defensive Player of the Year. And on top of that, his speed and size, sometimes all it takes is the right coach to reach a player and unlock their full potential. Look, every coach thinks they can get the best out of every guy. That's number one. But number two, all the things you just meant, the tempo, the ability to find guys. He's the number one player in the league at finding the open man on three-point shots. He has the most assisted threes in basketball for 2 years in a row. And if you remember, he didn't have very many three-point shooters previous to this season. But more so than anything, it is a business decision for teams. And even the Portland Trailblazers, their business has hit a standstill. Dame Lillard's great, but their fans know going into the year what they are. A team that's going to get knocked out in the first round. So they might have to make the decision to change it up a little bit. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Coming up at 3, Jeff Nadeau will get his thoughts on, is Colin Sexton a good enough trade for the Sixers? Kevin Durso on the Flyers, the NFL running back list. Where did Miles Sanders land on the list? Did he make the top 10? Did he even get an honorable mention? Find out. Go to 973ESPN.com. right, hanging out with you on a Tuesday. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. A lot of messages coming in on the text board. A lot of video streaming messages as well. Dan from EHC says, I don't know why people want Ben to be traded. What's wrong with winning 50 games and being relevant every year? Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but fans want to win a championship, and they have every right to want to win a championship. And the Sixers, by the way, I don't think they look at Ben Simmons as a total business entity. They think Ben Simmons can help them win a championship. They just don't look at him as the best player on the team. You guys want him to be the best player on the team. There's the divide. They're happy with Ben Simmons being a high-level role player. I compared him to what Dennis Rodman did with the Bulls. The Bulls didn't ask Dennis Rodman to score, and guess what? No Bulls fan complained that Dennis Rodman didn't score. They all understood that he was there to get rebounds. Oh, but defense. Yeah, Dennis Rodman's defense helped the Bulls win 3 championships. Bulls fans didn't say, trade Dennis Rodman because he doesn't score. Dennis Rodman didn't look to shoot. They just built the team better around with Rodman, where they didn't need Rodman to shoot. The Sixers, unfortunately, have not done a good job, and they can be criticized for that. They haven't done a good enough job. They haven't done a good enough job around him. If you have Ben Simmons, now, they drafted Ben Simmons. I think they thought he was good. I almost know that Brett Brown felt that Ben Simmons was going to be a better offensive player. And Brett Brown was hoping that Ben would be a better offensive weapon. Hasn't worked out. So now what Daryl Morey has done is start to put a team that is more conducive to Ben Simmons' lack of skill. They went out and got Seth Curry, Danny Green. He was only here a week before the draft. So he's not going to just rip the thing up and say, hey, let me start over from scratch with Malcolm Brogdon. No, he's going to say, let me find more guys that I can put around Ben Simmons so that I don't have to keep asking Ben Simmons to do stuff that, quite frankly, he's not very good at. Getting to the free throw line, making free throws, all of that stuff. Hey, should we ask him to add that stuff to his game and get better there? Absolutely. But that's minimized the amount that we need to lean on him. Michael Lenhart's watching the show on Facebook. He says, I would like to get Dame Lillard for him. Yeah, you and everybody else. Dame Lillard would be one guy that I have no problem trading for. Now, keep this in mind. Ben Simmons has gotten further in the playoffs the last 4 years. Dame Lillard went to the Western Conference Finals once. Other than that, they've been knocked out of the first round every single year. So what does that say? I don't think that means that Dame Lillard stinks. I know the Western Conference is a little bit tougher, but Dame Lillard hasn't had a lot of playoff success either. That's why Portland might have to say, hey, it's time for us to mix up the pile. Brian is watching on YouTube, but what do those teams have to offer the Sixers? Or a better question, what can we expect realistically? Indiana already made an offer, reportedly, for Malcolm Brogdon. That's not going to get it done. Minnesota, I don't think, has enough. I'm not doing it for D'Angelo Russell. Cleveland, Collins, Sexton. That might be something that is appealing. Toronto was another team that was mentioned. You're going to do it for Kyle Lowry? I don't know. De'Aaron Fox, Sacramento. So I don't think Indiana and Minnesota have enough to get it done. You would need a 3-team situation, I think. But as Mark Stein writes in his piece today, more teams will emerge. More teams will emerge. According to NBA insider Mark Stein, the team already has at least 5 known suitors for Simmons, and more will emerge. So get ready for a wild ride. That's all I'm saying here. That's all I'm saying is get ready for a wild ride, because you're going to see teams calling, and you're going to see offers, and you're going to see some, interesting offers for Ben Simmons because people value him. Mike, Giannis and Ben are the same size, similar skill sets. The difference is Giannis doesn't care if he misses, doesn't care what other people. Yeah, I've talked about that. I think a lot of people have brought that up. Giannis just doesn't care, right? He just doesn't care if he goes 0 for 10 from 3. He's going to keep shooting. I think Ben needs that. That's a problem. Mike, maybe Anthony Mackie lit a fire under Ben's with his SB skit. If you haven't seen it, yeah, it's up on our website. Yeah, the video. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that will be something that led to fire. I doubt it because it's not like it's the first time people have talked about his lack of shooting. That's not like breaking news. Mike, Rodman wasn't a point guard who disappears in the playoffs. That's valid. I mean, Rodman played a different position, but the Sixers kind of change his role like later. Like Rodman, the problem is the game is a lot different now where shooting is so much more of a premium than back then. So Rodman can just kind of hang out of the offense. He was not a part of the offense at all. He just kind of hung around and just got tip backs and offensive boards and put back. But he'd get offensive boards and throw the pass back out and give it to someone else. He just didn't look at the basket at all. Mike, I get what you're saying, but what was Rodman's salary in Chicago? Oh, I think Rodman got paid pretty well, to be honest with you. Now, salaries are all, based on the time, but we'll look that up for you. I think Rodman got paid pretty well with the Bulls. Remember, Rodman, he got 1 year, $9 million to stay in Chicago. Let's see. With the Bulls, he was the fourth highest paid player on the team. So you had Jordan. Let's see. He got $16 million in Chicago over the 3 years he was there. Now remember, this is a completely different time, but to put it in perspective, he made $4.9 million in San Antonio, $16 million in Chicago. Now, contracts back then are just way different, with everything and the rules and how things are now. So keep that into perspective. But that's a good point about the point guard stuff. Mike, no excuse for Ben not to take that shot with the season on the line. 100% agree. Not revisionist history to bring that back up. Ben has to take the shot. 100% has to. The Rodman comparison is not accurate. The Bulls didn't rely on him like the Sixers have to on Simmons when he handles the ball on offense where his weaknesses are exposed. The Rodman comparison is accurate because Rodman had a role that they valued. Simmons has a role that the Sixers value. If you notice late in the game, the problem is they don't have a capable player in that role. Like during the regular season, you'd see Tobias Harris or you'd see Shake Milton. You'd see somebody else kind of take that role from Simmons. They need to find a better player to take that role from Simmons. But the Rodman comparison that we're saying, the problem is the Sixers don't have the right roster makeup around Simmons. That's the problem. You're right about the fact that when he handles the ball, his weaknesses are exposed late in the game. The free throw shooting. Look, we could say this a million times. If you had Ben Simmons that played in the regular season, he shot 60% from the free throw line. Okay? He wasn't great. Just an average free throw shooter. 60%, probably below average. If he was the same player that he was in the regular season in that series, they would have swept the Hawks. So is he really that bad? Is he really that much of a liability, or was something going on there? I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. Maybe. Who knows? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. All right, we're going to change gears. Frank's Phillies mailbag on the other side. The Phillies at the midway point. What is the most pressing need? We'll go over to 97.3ESPN.com and check out the Phillies mailbag from Frank Close. Plus, we'll talk more about this report from Shams at The Athletic, Mark Stein. A lot of Ben Simmons stuff buzzing out there today. Is he on the verge? Paul Hudrick tonight at 5:25 joins me here. All right, Frank Close is next. Coming up, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. All right, 2:42 on a Tuesday. The mailbag from Frank Close is up right now at 973ESPN.com. Check out the Phillies mailbag every Tuesday with Frank, and he answers your Phillies questions. As the 44 and 44 Phillies are at the All-Star break, they don't resume till Friday night. They'll have a doubleheader against the Florida Marlins. They'll play 4 against the Marlins, Frank. And kind of it was tweeted out the other day by Paul Hembrough of ESPN, the producer for the Greeny Show, that they have the easiest schedule in all of baseball by far the second half of the year. So what should that do for Phillies fans' expectations about this team being a playoff team?
Well, I think they would expect then that they play better against those teams in the second half. Certainly, they had to muddle through a lot of tough series in the first half. You got to feel better about that, especially with the Phillies finally getting healthy, finally starting to score some runs. Knowing that you're coming up to that part of the schedule, it should give the Phillies fans, but not just the fans, but the Phillies themselves, the confidence to go into the second half and try to take care of business.
How they ended that first half of the season, 3-4 in Chicago, 2-3, actually 2-3 San Diego, 3-4 in Chicago, 2-3 in Boston, 44-44. What did you see in that last stretch of game with the Padres, Cubs, and Boston that says, okay, maybe Dave Dombrowski saw enough to help this team out?
Well, I think they showed that when healthy, the lineup is still a potent force. The Phillies last year were among the league leaders in runs scored. We've talked about that before. They were maybe 5th overall in all of baseball. And clearly with the lineup missing Didi Gregorius, missing Gene Segura, who if he had enough at bats would be one of the top hitters in baseball to qualify for the batting title. Certainly Bryce Harper has been banged up here and there, and JT Realmuto. Well, it's really hard to be that potent force in your lineup without those guys. And remember, they had games where they had Brad Miller in one corner outfield spot and Scott Kingery in the other outfield corner spot. It feels like they've come a long way since some of those lineups that just had so many holes in them, and you feel a lot better about this lineup than you did early on in the season where you had the rotation in center field and Scott Kingery playing all over the place because people were hurt. And I'll say this too, some of the other defensive upgrades like Ronald Torreyes getting healthy certainly helped the team a lot. And you feel a lot better knowing that Alec Bohm might be out for a little while when you have a Ronald Torreyes who can step in and play some good defense and even get some hits lately. So just the overall makeup of this team just feels much, much stronger. And you saw that play out in those 3 series.
Frank, obviously, the bullpen is at the top of the list, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's get over to the mailbag. John wants to know, why are we excited about being 44-44? Is the bar that low for this season?
Well, I think all along the thought for this season was that the Phillies were in a division where they could kind of hang in there. And you don't need to be much more than 500 to have a lead in this division. The Phillies right now are just 3.5 games out of first place. For all of the ugliness early in the season, they're playing well now. This is the natural breaking point. And as you said, the schedule is easier in the second half. So I think fans are feeling finally a little bit optimistic that they have a healthy team, that they're finally winning some series against some tough teams like the Padres and the Red Sox. And the second half is kind of that natural breaking point where you can catch your breath and look ahead. And I think Phillies fans, especially the way things ended compared to the way they started, they feel so much better about this Phillies team. And so there's a sense of optimism. I mean, the Phillies, let's face it, have a shot at winning this division as much now as before. The 3.5 games, if I'll say this right now, if the Phillies teams that played these 3 series face the Mets again next time, I feel like they'll do a lot better than that last series they split, where you kind of felt like they were just kind of meh. Remember that doubleheader where they win the one game 2-1 and then lose the other 2-1 as well. They just seem so flat. They seem so lifeless in that series. I don't think you're going to see that flat, lifeless team now, since you have all your stars in your lineup. They're scoring runs. I feel like that Mets series would have gone a lot differently if the Phillies of right now face that team compared to a few weeks ago.
We'll go back to the bullpen because this is a question from Rocky. He wants to know, do you see the Phillies going after Craig Kimbrell? And if not, is there a bullpen arm you think they can go after?
Well, see, this is a tough one because I think, yes, the Phillies would love to have Craig Kimbrell. He was the closer for that 2018 Boston Red Sox team that won the World Series under Dave Dombrowski's watch. But here's the big but. I think the Phillies will check in, but they probably don't have enough to trade for him. The Phillies really only have two strong top prospects right now. The only one in the top 100 in the MLB pipeline is Mick Abel, pitcher they drafted just a year ago. Not going to trade him. And Bryson Stott, their infield prospect that could be a starter on this team as soon as next year, they're not going to trade him either. So if you look at the rest of their prospect list, they really don't have a whole lot that a team like the Cubs might be interested in. So I feel like there's going to be a team out there that will want Kimbrel that have something better than the Phillies can offer to get Kimbrel. So, and as I've kind of talked about before, this Phillies team this year, you're trying to hang in there and compete, but you're also not trying to trade your prospects or do any harm long term. I think the types of the trades the Phillies will make will be trading the Mickey Moniaks and Adam Hasleys of the world right now, the ones that are not necessarily prospects, but guys that could help another team somewhere else. When you look at the teams that are kind of at the bottom right now, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Colorado Rockies, I think the Phillies will definitely look to make deals with those types of teams, but I think the types of relievers they're going to get in return are going to be the veteran types that can help bolster a bullpen. They're not going to get the lockdown closer, but what they might get is like a Joaquim Soria from the Diamondbacks or a Daniel Bard from the Colorado Rockies. They're not lockdown relievers, but they're veteran relievers with a decent track record. I think those types of players are within the Phillies' price range right now because those teams are going to need a lot in exchange for them. I could see a team like the Rockies taking a shot on a Mickey Moniak or something. And unfortunately, for the Phillies, he was a first overall pick. I don't think he's going to land you very much. But, I think the Phillies need to find we've been through Mickey Moniak, been through Adam Haseley. They're going to need to find a longer-term solution in center field. But one of those guys might go in a trade to somebody else.
That will be interesting to see the bullpen situation. I agree with you. They don't have a whole heck of a lot to offer for a top-level guy. Do you do a swap for mid-level players? Hey, we'll give you this guy. You give us – you're a good team. You're a bad team with a good closer. So can we give you something so we can have that guy? Do they have that level of player to give away? That's something Dave Dombrowski will have to figure out. JV wants to know, would trading Andrew McCutchen make sense if the returns were? I think we know the answer to this question. But that's the problem. I get asked all the time, Frank, why not trade Gene Segura? Why not trade Andrew McCutchen? Why not trade Didi Gregorius? You can trade those guys. But for a team to take them, they're going to say, we don't really want them. If you want to give them to us, we'll take them, but we don't want to give you anything for us taking them.
Right. I think it's kind of counterproductive if you trade an Andrew McCutchen anyway. Now, assuming that you're trying to win, right? I feel like there would be a team that would love to have Andrew McCutchen as sort of outfielder number 4 or maybe 3.5, depending on who the team is, maybe as a platoon player. But the Phillies are benefiting from having him right now. If the Phillies are going to try to make the playoffs, McCutchen is somebody that's highly respected. He hasn't gone deep in the playoffs in his career. I think the furthest was with the 2018 Yankees that lost to that Red Sox team in the ALCS. But he's somebody you want around. He's been tremendous for the Phillies the last 6 weeks or so. And if you're going to try to hang in and make the playoffs, then you want him on your team. And so if the question is maybe perhaps the idea of a team maybe buying and selling at the same time, maybe trading him and then picking up somebody else, I think that would be a little disruptive to kind of the energy that's been building on this team the last few weeks. And I think that if the Phillies are going to win this year, if they're going to overtake the Mets, they're going to have to roll with the core that they have without disrupting it. And I think if you take McCutchen out of the mix, then you will kind of disrupt what's working right now. And so you hope to get 2.5 more months out of this core and kind of overtake the Mets, and he'd be a big part of that.
Yeah, I know that the outfield in this system is not very good. So, just giving away McCutchen, you almost have to say, if you gave him away, what do you even have to play in the outfield the rest of the way? That's a good point that you bring up there. What do they do with the back end of the starting rotation?
That's another tough question. I mean, there's Chase Anderson has been rehabbing as a starter. You might see Chase Anderson again soon after this All-Star break, especially if Nola can't pitch. That'll be particularly tough if they're going to be missing Nola for a while. We haven't gotten any updates yet on whether or not Nola was just exposed to COVID or if he had a positive test. But yeah, that's a challenge. I think we did see over this series that Vince Velasquez, when you try to ride him, you can't. And Matt Moore was okay, but okay in the sense that after 4 innings, you pull him. And we've talked about this before. This piggybacking of starters just empties out your bullpen because you use somebody like Bailey Falter for a couple innings one day, well then you're not using him the next day, and then you've wasted, not say wasted, but you've taken up a whole extra spot in your bullpen. So this will be a challenging time. I don't know if there's a team out there willing to trade them a starter, but the types of starters that they might be able to get in trade might not be better than the Chase Anderson and Matt Moore that they already have. So you might see this starting rotation end up being what it was at the beginning of the season with Moore and Anderson in it, and Vince Velasquez back in the bullpen. I guess the wild card would be Spencer Howard. He pitched a couple starts at AAA recently. The one he was pretty good. He went 5 innings, allowed no runs, and then the next one he was just over 4 innings. So, which of course was not what the Phillies couldn't deal with when Spencer Howard was with them. But if there's somebody out there that they can grab cheaply enough that will help, I think they'll give it a shot. But I think the shame of it too is if the Phillies had a functioning bullpen, then you could talk about Ranger Suarez being a starter. And right now, you need him. I mean, that gutsy 7-out performance. You need that right now. So I don't see there being a lot of options. Bailey Falter could be a rotation option, but right now they kind of need him in that long spot. I will say this though, Chris Sanchez opened up some eyes the other day. When making that, he was not the starter. Brandon Kinsler was, but he gave the Phillies the bulk of those innings on Sunday, and I think he's somebody who could work himself into plans. He's been pretty good at AAA, but wasn't in the immediate plans. But he's somebody I can see the Phillies going to if they need somebody. He might be the perfect six-man. I'm thinking basketball because you were just talking basketball. 27th man for this doubleheader coming up. And maybe he can give the Phillies some innings in one of those games.
All right, Frank Close, the Phillies Mailbag. Check it out every Tuesday over at 973ESPN.com. Frank, I'll see you, pal.
All right, have a good one, Mike.
All right, and of course, we'll get back to the baseball a little bit later in the week. Bob Wankel will join us on Friday's show. But when we come back, my man Jeff Nadeau is going to talk about Ben Simmons. Stick around. they get. I know there are many out there that just feel his value is completely cratered since that playoff series. Others who are reporting that there is robust interest in him. Daryl Morey, your move, buddy. We'll see what the Sixers do. Jeff Nadeau, at Jeff Nadeau on Twitter. And, of course, you can follow him there. We got plenty more getting you ready for the start of training camp, the NFL season, the college football. The NBA draft's coming up, too.
Yeah, one of my favorite things. Very much look forward to that. I'm getting my mock ready right now. 60 selections. Very excited about that.
All right. Jeff Nadeau, kind enough to join us, as always, here on the Sports Bash. Good conversation, my man.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you.
All right, Jeff's right there. Coming up on the other side, you heard from Jeff, and we talked a little Sixers. We'll do more Sixers with Paul later on tonight. Kevin Durso on the other side as we take a look at what's next for the Orange and Black. Stick around.
The Midsummer Classic. The 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game.
He's the most remarkable and most exciting player in the game right now.
Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, and Vlad Guerrero lead the American League. They'll face Fernando Tatis Jr., Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna Jr. The 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Coverage begins today at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN.
O'Reilly. When you need auto parts, O'ReillyAuto.com is just a few clicks away. We offer convenient options for you to get your parts quickly. Order online and pick up for free at your local O'Reilly Auto Parts store. We'll even bring it out curbside, or you can have your
All right, everybody, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Earlier today, we told you the Flyers had a little press conference. Chuck Fletcher was speaking. Got a little chance to see what their offseason now that the Stanley Cup is in the past. The Tampa Bay Lightning, back-to-back champions, 5 games. They beat the Montreal Canadiens. So how can the Flyers get to that level? Well, it all starts now. And Kevin Durso is here, our Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com, who has some insight on what Chuck Fletcher had to say today. And, Kevin, what this offseason might look like. Let me start with Fletcher today and some of the takeaways that you got. A lot of this obviously has to do with the draft also coming up. So what was maybe the key comment or point that Chuck Fletcher made today that stood out that makes you kind of raise your eyebrows?
Well, he definitely noted that last year was unacceptable and seemed to make it clear that that not one person's going to fix this by himself. So you can't just look for one guy in a trade, one guy that you think you get rid of in expansion that opens up cap space for one player. It's not going to fix the whole problem here. So that is a fair recognition for where this team is, because you're far enough away from where the Tampa Bay Lightning are and even where the Montreal Canadiens are, especially. You know, the Montreal Canadiens were a weird situation this year because they finished with 1 win fewer than the Flyers did technically, but made the playoffs, had more points, and then make a run. That doesn't necessarily equate to being a true contender. I think that Montreal is certainly a playoff team going forward because they'll continue to grow with their development, and maybe the Flyers aren't really there at this moment when you think about all the things they need to do. They need better help defensively, and Fletcher definitely noted that everybody's got to be better on the defensive end, that they need to improve the goals against. And I think the big takeaway was something that he said that was, he kind of emphasized by repeating himself. You have no chance, and then he said again, no chance to win in this league if you're not in the top half of the league defensively. And that really is where it comes down to. This is a philosophical thing at this point for this team, is that when you're allowing goals at the clip that they were a year ago,
right,
it is a complete team-wide issue, and everybody needs to improve. And it sounds to me like, based on what he was saying, while not giving away certainly a lot of information, that it's been talked about within the organization that the focus needs to be that everybody comes ready to be better in that area.
Yeah, obviously this is a team that, I mean, it fell way below expectations, though, right? I mean, this team went 7 games against the Islanders in the second round. They were the number 1 seed, and the one guy they lost was Matt Niskanen. I mean, it sounds as if, without saying it, they really look at that loss as one of the biggest problems that this team had, and that's, I don't know. I mean, does that sound like such an unfixable thing? Hey, we got to replace Matt Niskanen. Last year, unfixable, maybe because of how it caught them off guard, but they got a full year now to say, hey, how do we replace Matt Niskanen? Is that the one thing and the most important thing they need to figure out how to do?
Well, I think that what they need to do most importantly, kind of in the same vein of replacing Matt Niskanen, is find somebody who plays well alongside of Ivan Provorov. That's really what I think was missing, is not necessarily that Matt Niskanen was the end-all, be-all of players who makes you better defensively, but he balanced out Ivan Provorov's game so well that you just could trust that top pairing to do whatever they needed to, and they worked so well together, and it just had this trickle-down effect to the 2 lower pairings, whoever was playing, that everybody seemed to be better, and then the forwards kind of bought in as well. I know that he made mention of, today specifically, of not only the players who were like defensively trying to add players, but again, not only just one player not make the team, but also that it is a philosophical thing, and he talked about the pandemic being in effect, and guys who, you know, whether it's lack of practice time, not having the normal off-season training, whatever it is, there's really no excuses now. Like if you sat there, we didn't like the excuse of the pandemic anyway, and all the COVID restrictions and things like that. We didn't like that excuse at the end of the year anyway, but you really don't have anything to fall back on now. You have a normal off-season, rinks are open, guys should be able to be training. The plan that the front office would like these players to follow in the off-season has been laid out for them. So they have all the guidelines they need at this point, and it's really now just about buying into the whole process here and doing everything you can to cut down on the goals against, be the defensive team you were 2 seasons ago, because you were a really good defensive team, and that wasn't just Matt Niskanen. That was other guys buying into the defensive side. So you need to have all of that in place, and I think that that's really the thing. It's not just a matter of replacing one player who seemingly from 1 year made your team look that much better. I think completely they strayed away from what the philosophy was in being a better defensive team that made them look so good and had expectations where they were. And Fletcher also noted about the possibility that expectations got into the heads of some of the younger players too, that there's pressure now involved with making a run, getting 1 game short of being part of the NHL's Final Four, and then having to follow it up. It's not an excuse. These are professional athletes. They need to be able to come out and deliver based on everything that goes on around the game. But yes, it was a strange year, and you can't read too much into it, but at the same time, you've got to go out and make improvements, because as he said, what happened last year was unacceptable.
Right. Well, there's a lot here that, we can kind of break down. They got the expansion draft coming up, so they're going to lose a guy. Who is the most likely guy or guys that the Seattle Kraken, and how might the Flyers approach this expansion draft? Because obviously, hey, do you just let them take whoever they want? You work out a side deal? How do you feel? Which guy or guys seem like the most likely to be taken, and what's the approach here for Philadelphia?
Yeah, there's a couple. I'd say Shane Gostisbehere is probably right at the top of that list. There's interest in I've heard there's interest in trying to unload a big contract. Now, Chuck Fletcher did say today it's not easy to do with the bigger contracts. There's a lot of work involved, and it's even harder in a flat cap world. But certainly names like Jake Voracek and James Van Riemsdyk have come up. It's been talked about behind the scenes, I'm sure. They're looking for ways to give themselves as much cap flexibility as possible. So that's where especially a lot of rumors involving Jake Voracek come from. I wouldn't be overly shocked if Seattle didn't help the Flyers in any way, shape, or form in that area with guys like Nick Aube-Kubel or Robert Haig as well, because they will probably be unprotected. Fletcher basically said that their protection list is pretty much finalized. And barring something crazy in the next week or less than a week, actually, when the list has to be out before the draft happens next Wednesday, that really they've got it figured out. And I think that most of it's easy to deduct. I mean, obviously the goaltender you're protecting is Carter Hart. Obviously the defenseman you're probably protecting are Ivan Provorov, Travis Sanheim, and Phil Myers. And then from there, the forwards, most of them are easy to identify as well, because you're going to look at protecting guys. Claude Drew and Kevin Hayes have no move clauses. You're going to protect Sean Couturier. You're going to protect Oscar Lindblom. You're probably protecting Travis Konechny. You're down to only about two names left at that point that need to go on the list. Scott Lawton has already been confirmed as a guy who's going to be protected when he signed an extension. So you're really down to like one or two names that have to go on there. And to an extent, it's easier to leave those bigger contracts exposed and probably get by in an expansion draft. I don't know that they're going to be overly disappointed if they lose a big contract, because it means the entire salary goes. But Fletcher did say that he is open to all possibilities, and possibilities in terms of whether Seattle just takes a player from the unprotected list or whether they do work out a side deal. So both options are certainly on the table.
Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider, at Kevin_Durso. Flyers, obviously the offseason, a big one. The best way to improve this team, or the most, logical way for this team with their situation, would be either via trade, free agency. What's the best way they can improve this team based on where they are cap-wise, what they have on their current roster?
It's not an easy answer to give right now because of the restricted free agents that they have, because you have to use some of your current caps. They have a little bit of current cap space at the moment, but money's going to go in new deals to Travis Sanheim and Carter Hart. And Chuck Fletcher basically said that's not a front burner issue right now. They have time to work that out. Those guys will be qualified offers and they'll be back, no question. It's just a matter of for how much. And, I know that was a hot topic go after the previous season, after all the successes that they had in the playoffs, making it almost through the second round into the NHL's Final Four. What kind of contract would Carter Hart get if he followed up that season with another one that was just as spectacular? What kind of money could they be looking at, and what kind of cap hit? It's kind of a different animal now because Carter Hart struggled and didn't have the best year, and now you kind of have to navigate that with the flat cap and what you can do to make sure that you have money to address the other areas of need. I think trading is probably more of an area that could be a better way to go, just because, as Chuck Fletcher said, you might with the flat cap see more just natural hockey trades, not these different cap trades or things that you see where there's a lot of gymnastics going on with this stuff. You might just see straight up money for money, one for ones, things like that, where guys are making deals that strictly are meant to improve your team or to try to switch out some contracts and maybe navigate the money of it in the long term. That might be the way to go. I think the interesting thing and the telling thing that Fletcher did say today about that is that basically once you get past the first day or two of free agency, and this includes trades in the offseason as well, most of the activity is kind of over with at that point. Like, you've made your decisions for the offseason, and now the focus goes to preparing. So it's kind of what makes August a little bit of a boring month in the hockey world, because there's not a lot of activity that happens beyond that. You get through free agency and you get through the draft, and you have deals that are sometimes made at the draft or deals that are made in that week leading up to free agency. And it's pretty much over at that point. Like, you know that you have to get to work right now, and these next 2 to 3 weeks are exactly when it's got to happen.
Right, because the Flyers were quiet at the trade deadline, and obviously it seems that because of that, you would gear up for making your improvements during the summer, and they're going to need, obviously, I guess they're going to need a backup goaltender. I don't know what's going to happen with Brian Elliott there. They need defensive help, as we mentioned. Seth Jones is a name that keeps coming up. Get your comments on that. Johnny Gaudreau's name. People in this area, Flyers fans, always like the big names. So Seth Jones, Johnny Gaudreau. But as you just mentioned, these next 2 weeks, you might see the most aggressive Chuck Fletcher.
Yeah, and one of the things that was really telling about his possible aggressiveness was when he was asked about the Flyers' first-round pick, the 13th overall pick of the upcoming draft, because we know that the philosophy of this team for many years, and Fletcher admitted that it's probably been like this since about 2014, which ironically was when Ron Hextall came in and started as the GM of this team, or was part of this team at that point. And, you don't just completely shift focus from developing players and drafting. And certainly I think that there's an eye on what the Tampa Bay Lightning have done over the last 2 years, because the majority of their team was draft picks that they've developed really well. And maybe you start to bring into question your development process, that you're drafting guys, but they're not getting to the next level. And, for a lot of fans out there look at guys, and I mentioned this, I believe, with Phil Myers specifically, that he's an undrafted free agent. So it's a little unrealistic sometimes to just shoot him from undrafted free agent who didn't get taken by any team over the course of his draft years to top pairing defenseman as potential. That takes a lot of development. So maybe curbing your expectations on some of these guys can make a difference. So him saying that he's not opposed to trading the 13th pick because you sometimes have to use pieces like that to make the significant improvements that really go the distance and make an impact and get people invested in your team, that might be the way to go. I don't know if people are really going to sit there and be heartbroken if they don't use that pick and use it to get something that they desperately need,
right,
instead of hearing about a guy that, he's 3-4 years away from being a real impact player. I don't think people need that anymore. I think what they need is, and that's not to say that they don't want to hear about certain picks that have already been made. Cam York's going to be a very popular name as the season begins, and both Fletcher and Brent Flair, the assistant GM, have talked about how he now knows, after his second year of college and after making his NHL debut at the end of the season, he knows what it takes now to prepare in an off season. Those are the guys that you have to start to try to get excited for. Maybe you don't want to pass them by too quickly, and that's why you consider pieces that you include in trades. But certainly when it came to the pick, he looked almost antsy when that question was asked, as if I know in the back of my mind it's out there. I've already thrown it on the table, and it certainly seems to me like that pick is there for the taking.
Kevin Durso is with us, our Flyers insider. Real quick on the expansion draft, can they Voracek? Can they say, "Hey, we'll give you a pick if you take him, please"?
They can try to. I don't know if just a pick will do it.
Maybe because Hackstall being there.
Yeah, I mean it could weigh into things. It might not at all. I don't know if. I don't really know yet what Dave Hackstall's influence is going to be on the way that they build the team per se. And, so we'll see how that goes. I certainly think that they would like to do that. Like that keeps coming back to the thing that I keep hearing. They'd like to move a big contract. And it's certainly the easiest way to do it at this point would be to find a way for Seattle, because Seattle's got to make a cap somehow, and they don't have to go near the salary cap limit, but they do have to reach the cap floor. And that's one way to do it. You can make those savvy little pickups that you do with all these other players that you can get, and that's kind of goes to my point of like a Nick Aube-Kubel or Robert Haig. Other teams have guys like that too that don't make a lot of money, could be a valuable player, but you're going to have to get there somehow. So you're going to need names, and you're going to need people who are recognized. And, for as polarizing a figure as Jake Voracek is with this team, he does have an all-star game to his credit. He is a name that would be known around the league. So Seattle could be looking at that and going, that's a place to begin. That's a place to build the franchise around. Yeah. I know he's probably not the first name that comes to mind when you think building a franchise around a guy, but that could be the way they are thinking. And if that's the case, and you add a little bit of a sweetener, whether it's a prospect that you may not see it having a future in Philly, or a pick or something to make it a little bit better. And certainly, again, I think that's where that 13th comes in handy, maybe, is that, if you can unload the big contract and say, by the way, we'll give you the first round pick too.
Yeah.
They'd probably be interested. I mean, they've already got the second overall pick in the draft. And I'm sure like Vegas did their first year, adding multiple first round picks is not off the table for them either, to build a future behind the guys they pick up now.
All right. So much intrigue with this offseason, because this is a team that was the 1 seed, 7th game, Islanders, round 2 years ago. Terrible season this year, just downright disappointing. I like John Klingberg, by the way. Any chance of prying him away from Dallas?
That's an interesting. I do like him too. I will say that I do like him. I don't know what their interest
would be. He's got a year left on that deal. Yeah, he signed like a 7-year deal a little while back. I think that's almost done.
Yeah, and here's the other thing for Dallas too, is Dallas has the guy who actually was picked right behind Nolan Patrick, 3rd overall, Miro Heiskanen, who's due for a new contract. He's due for a new contract this offseason, and it's good chance it's not going to be small. So because they definitely value him as well. So I'm sure that things like that. It sounds like they're talking about any possibility that's out there, if there is a possibility. I do think that the expansion, like another week from now, things are going to pick up big time. Beyond, the news of the buyouts from Minnesota today, and the some of the other stuff that's going on, and maybe a few minor trades. The Duncan Keith trade happened yesterday, But beyond that, I don't think a lot's going to happen until the expansion draft's over. And Fletcher said kind of seems like there's a majority of teams in the league waiting to get to that point. And then moves are going to follow in rapid succession because it's basically a 2-week sprint at that point for the offseason picture that has the most activity. And it's going to be busy.
Well, this has been a busy conversation. Lot jam-packed in there. Kevin Durso at Kevin_Durso. Follow him there. All the Flyers off-season action is about to heat up, and when news happens, you can check out Kevin on Twitter over at 973ESPN.com, and, of course, right here on the Sports Bash. All right, Durso, good to see you, man.
Good to see you, Mike. Take care.
All right, there's Kevin Durso here on the Sports Bash as we get a little insight on the Flyers. A lot packed into that conversation. But when we come back, we shift gears over to the NFL. ESPN put out its running back list today, top 10 running backs. Where did Miles Sanders land? Was he even on the list? Find out. You might be surprised. Coming up next.
The moment you fire up a Gator UTV, the engine has your full attention. The completed job is on the horizon, and the trail meets its match. Just like that, you made short work of a long to-do list. Run with us on a John Deere Gator UTV. With effortless four-wheel drive at the flip of a switch and our smoothest shifting transmission yet. Nothing runs like a Deere. Search John Deere Gator for more.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Don't forget, you can get the app in your app store on the Android market or on Google Play or 973ESPN.com/app. I'm Mike Gill. The app is powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. We've been looking through the best players at each position. ESPN.com surveyed 50 executives, players, coaches, scouts in the NFL and ranked them 1 through 10 with a couple of honorable mentions at each position. Today they did the running backs. We talked quarterbacks yesterday. That was fun. Quarterback debates are always great. Running backs, though, it's weird. The league is kind of shifting back to running backs kind of being important. Doesn't mean you draft them in the first round or number 1 overall like you did years ago, but it's becoming more and more evident that running backs are key components here. So let's take a look at ESPN.com's rankings of the top running backs. Again, these are 50 executives, coaches, scouts, and players who helped ESPN come up with the top 10 players at each position. We've talked about the edge rushers, interior defensive line. Fletcher Cox was number 5. Off-ball linebackers, cornerbacks. Darius Slay was number 9. Safeties, offensive tackles. Lane Johnson got an honorable mention. Interior offensive line. Brandon Brooks and Jason Kelsey both got honorable mentions. Quarterbacks, honorable mention went to Carson Wentz. And today, it is the top 10 running backs. Tomorrow they'll do wide receivers, and on Thursday they'll have the tight ends. So let's take a look at this. Let's go from 10 up to 1, and then we'll look at the honorable mentions because this list is pretty good. Number 10, Josh Jacobs from the Raiders. Now, Jacobs is a guy, I thought he came out of the gates and was just amazing last year. And then he kind of slowed down a little bit. He's kind of a plotter, kind of a guy who breaks a lot of tackles, and he's a big running back. He's a load. He's one of those guys that wears you down. I thought Josh Jacobs was going to be a little bit better last year. He kind of slowed down, I thought, towards the end of the year, but still like him. He is the number 10 ranked running back. Josh Jacobs from the Raiders. Number 9, Joe Mixon from the Bengals. This one was a little surprising to me. The fact that he was as high as number 4 on some ballots, and some ballots he was unranked at all. Now, he's got big size, 6'1", 220. He's kind of an all-around guy. I guess his production on that team, they have a bad offensive line, and, you know, he averaged like 3.6 yards per carry last year. And I guess it shows to players, coaches, scouts that, hey, if he's on a better team, this guy would really have all the tools to be an elite type of back. So Joe Mixon, number 9, Cincinnati. Number 8, Aaron Jones from the Green Bay Packers. He was unranked as an honorable mention guy last year. His highest ranking was 4 this year by the panel, and his lowest was 13. It averaged out to number 8. They say that he's a little bit of product of scheme, but I think he was a 5th-round guy that was not even on their depth chart and kind of worked his way up and turns out to be on this list at number 8. What I like about him, too, he's a good pass catcher, 47 catches last year. Not a big play guy out of the backfield. So I'll get to that, what I'm meaning about that in just a little bit. Number 7, Zeke Elliott. Now, somebody had him ranked number 1 on their ballot. His lowest ranking was 12. The average, he came out to number 7. Last year, he was number 3. This year, he's number 7. I'm interested to see what happens with Zeke Elliott. He had 0 runs of more than 40 yards the last 2 years. Will he be one of those DeMarco Murray types that just kind of steadily declines and then boom? I say steadily declines because he did, I will say, Murray had that bad year in Philadelphia, and then he went to Tennessee and wasn't horrible there, but he wasn't the same guy he was at Dallas. Getting Dak Prescott back will certainly, I think, help him out. But I'm definitely interested to see what kind of explosion. It looked like Zeke kind of lost a step last year, but he's playing behind a bad offensive line last year. They were banged up big time. They didn't have a passing game to speak of. So Zeke Elliott, number 7 on the list of the top 10 running backs entering 2021. Number 6 is also in the NFC East, and that's Saquon Barkley. He was ranked as high as number 1 on list. He was number 12 on others. He averaged out to number 6. Last year on this list, he was number 1. But the torn ACL, we'll see what happens when he comes back from that. He was kind of just average last year in limited play. And I say average, I mean, he didn't play all that much, but he had 34 yards on 19 carries. And before he went down on an injury, and an AFC scout said still has the rare combination of speed and explosion and size and elusiveness. He's been kind of a victim of bad supporting cast. He does things as well or better than anyone on this list. Look, I think Barkley, if healthy and a good team around him, is definitely one of the best weapons in all of the NFL. That's the question. Which Barkley are you getting? A guy coming back from ACL. But we've seen guys come back. That's almost an injury now that you don't even blink at anymore, right? It's just like, ACL, he'll be back. He'll be fine. And Barkley had the injury early enough that he should be well ready to return. I mean, unless something severely went wrong with the injury. He played in 2 games last year, so he missed essentially the entire season. Now, he said he doesn't have a timetable when he thinks he's going to return, but I think you'll see him back for the start of the season. Yeah, he did not get off to a great start in the 2 games last year, although, in the 2 games, he played Pittsburgh. He had 15 carries for 6 yards, and in the Chicago game, he had 4 for 28 before he ended up getting hurt. So Barkley, I'm a fan of Barkley. I think he's a guy that obviously has a ton of talent, but that team around him, what do they bring to the table for him to help him out? Number 5, Christian McCaffrey. He was listed as high as number 1. He was down to 11. He averaged out to number 5. Last year is number 2. He's another guy. who got hurt last year, and he missed 13 games with that ankle sprain, and then he got hurt the shoulder. That's the one problem with him is the durability, says an NFC offensive line coach. Love the player, but at that size with the injuries, I'm just not sure. Now, when he's out there, he's explosive, and he is elusive, and he does it all. But again, he's a guy who the size and the injuries could start catching up to him and take away what makes him so good, the explosiveness. So Christian McCaffrey at number 5, Saquon Barkley at number 6, two similar guys in terms of explosiveness, what they do, but the injuries, we'll have to keep our eyes on both of those guys. So far in the NFC East, we got Zeke Elliott, we got Saquon Barkley, and now number 4, we go to the AFC, and it's Nick Chubb from the Cleveland Browns. Highest ranking number 2, lowest ranking number 8, averaged out to number 4, and last year he was number 7. So I like Chubb a lot in terms of that whole dynamic with him. And the fact that they have the 2 running backs out there that, the ability to give him a little bit of a break. It certainly, I think, helps out his big play ability. They have 2 really good running backs with him and Kareem Hunt, but Chubb is really the guy. An NFC exec said best pure runner in football, says I take him over Derrick Henry because he's a little bit more explosive. When you look at what Nick Chubb did last year, I think it kind of gets lost in the sauce a little bit because, the fact is there was 2 running backs out there that both had big seasons, and he didn't have like this monster number. He had only 190 carries for 1,067 yards. He averaged almost 90 yards a game, almost 6 yards a carry. He had 600-yard games. He had 12 touchdowns last year. One area where he's a little weak is in the receiving game. But you think about this. The year before, this is what I'm talking about. The year before, he had almost 300 carries, almost 1,500 yards. Last year, those carries were cut by over 100 carries. He had almost 500 yards less. But he had more yards per carry. He had 12 touchdowns. So having Hunt, I think, helps him, even though his numbers are a little down because of it. Nick Chubb, number 4. Number 3, Dalvin Cook. He was highest ranked number 1, lowest number 7, averaged out to number 3. Last year he was number 6, so he moved up on this list. Dalvin Cook is a guy, he had the ACL, so if Saquon Barkley can go back and look at something, go back and look at the fact that Dalvin Cook, came back from that injury and had a tremendous year last year for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, it didn't help them in the win-loss category, but 1,500-plus yards, 44 catches, 17 touchdowns, and he missed a game. Missed 2 games last year, actually. But he did have 312 carries, 1,500 yards, as I mentioned, 312 carries. You got to wonder the durability for a guy who had the knee injury, and he's a smaller guy to begin with at 5'10". Well, he's 210 pounds. I mean, he's kind of I don't want to say a Darren Sproles because he's a little bit bigger than Sproles, but kind of a shorter running back. Dalvin Cook, though, he's a guy that I have no problem with him being on this spot on the list, number 3. As a AFC executive who voted Cook number 1, says Cook exhibits that better than anyone else. Versatility, catch the ball in the backfield, run outside the tackles, and display explosive traits. Definitely no problem with Cook there. Number 2, Alvin Kamara. Now, Kamara was as high as number 1, as low as number 8. He averaged out to number 2. Last year was number 4. He's going to be interesting this year because now the offense, I would imagine, gets centered a little bit more around Kamara than it does the passing game with Drew Brees gone. Now, Brees was not great last year. Obviously, he had some injury problems, but Kamara did not have these monster numbers. I mean, he had, in 15 games, 832 yards. He wasn't even a 1,000-yard rusher last year. The 16 touchdowns are impressive. Where he's big is he catches the ball. 83 catches, 5 touchdowns, almost 800 yards there. They always keep his carries down, so he hasn't been a 1,000-yard rusher. So you're not getting that type of back. You're getting the guy who catches the ball out of the backfield. But I think that they are going to lean a lot more on Kamara this year. Now, they also have Latavius Murray to carry the ball between the tackles, but an NFC executive said about Kamara, quote, His balance is incredible, one of the smoothest players in the league, but he always plays with power. His 9.1 yards per catch, though, that to me is where he excels. And as a high-ranking NFL executive said, if I was building a team, he would be my running back. He's the perfect modern back. So what does that mean? Not a 1,000-yard rusher, but a guy who catches the ball out of the backfield and does stuff after the catch. That's what I like about Kamara as well. And number one on the list, it was Derrick Henry. He was number one on a lot of lists. He was lowest, number 6. He was averaged out to the best running back in football by 50 scouts, players, coaches, and executives. His ranking last year was number 5. What are you going to say? Henry was a beast, and he is a 2,000-yard runner at one point. So, look, Derrick Henry is not – we just talked about Kamara. Henry, you wouldn't say is the modern back. You know, Kamara 5'10", Henry 6'3", 250 pounds. And look, he had a monster year last year. But he had 378 carries to get to 2,027 yards. He averaged 126 yards per game. He had 17 touchdowns. So you can't knock the production that Derrick Henry gave you. 1,500 yards the year before. So for 3 straight years, he's been a 1,000-yard back. For 3 straight years, double-digit touchdowns. Doesn't catch the ball a whole heck of a lot. But the question is, at 27 years old, how many more years does Derrick Henry put up these monster seasons? That remains to be seen. Will he have that DeMarco Murray? Look, how many carries last year? 378, right? How many carries? I don't think DeMarco Murray had 3. I think he had more than that, to be honest with you. That year in Dallas when he was just absolutely bananas, he had 392. All right, so similar. He had 392 carries, DeMarco Murray did, 1,800 yards that year in Dallas, and then he went to Philadelphia the next year. Now, he did have a 1,200-yard season with 9 touchdowns in Tennessee a couple of years after, 2 years after that. So he didn't completely fall off the map. But that 392-carry season, and DeMarco Murray, 6'1", 220. Now, not quite as big as Derrick Henry, but still a big back. You wonder, those 378 the year before, 300, and that's just regular season. So this is where it gets interesting. They're your top 10, the honorable mentions, all right? And we had wondered, we talked about it with Moshe yesterday, will Miles Sanders be on the list? Well, you got Jonathan Taylor, Indianapolis, which one AFC scout says he'll be a top 5 back by the end of the year. AFC executive on Kareem Hunt, he might be the best overall back in Cleveland. He's a combination of Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. Remember Kareem Hunt, if you recall, people, Kareem Hunt was the guy in Kansas City. Got himself into some trouble. They end up letting him go, and he ends up in Cleveland, and people are like, wow, what are they going to do with both these guys? But Kareem Hunt, if you remember, in Kansas City, 1,300 yards, 53 catches, 11 total touchdowns. And they have both of those guys out there. So when the AFC executive says he might be the best back in Cleveland, they ain't lying. Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Kansas City. He essentially took the Kareem Hunt role. I think he's a good back. I'm not saying that he's not a good back. I thought production-wise, I was a little disappointed with what he brought to the table production-wise. I think a lot of people thought, hey, he's in that offense. He's very small, 5'7". Now, we talk about Darren Sproles. He's more in that 5'7", 200. He's kind of a squatty back. I thought he'd have bigger numbers. Not that he had bad. I mean, he had 800 yards as a rookie, but 4 touchdowns. He caught the ball 36 times, just 1 score. He only had 5 total touchdowns. I think you're going to see a big year out of him, but he made the honorable mention list. It shows you what people think of him. And then the last one on the list, honorable mention, Miles Sanders, Philadelphia. An AFC defensive coach says he's underrated. In a better scheme for backs, he'd be a prominent guy. Great burst. So that brings me back to some of the guys that were up here. Do I want Josh Jacobs or Miles Sanders? Well, Miles Sanders has the fastest speed crossing the line of scrimmage in the entire league, 21 miles an hour. He's the fastest back. Miles Sanders, I think I take over Josh Jacobs. I think I take over Aaron Jones. It'll be interesting to see what happens with guys like Christian. I think Sanders was criminally underused by Philadelphia the last couple of years. I think Sanders is an excellent talent. I think Sanders has excellent speed. I think they can use Sanders so much better. And I see Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis. And I see the running backs in Indianapolis. And I just wonder what the Eagles are going to do with Miles Sanders this year. I think Sanders is such an intriguing back to use this season for Philadelphia. Jonathan Taylor had 232 carries last year. He had 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns. You know, Miles Sanders, I think, can be that type of back. Jonathan Taylor's 5'10", 226. Right? You got 5'10", 226, and Miles Sanders, 5'11", 215. I think you'll see Miles Sanders be a similar type of back than what Indianapolis had with Jonathan Taylor last year. You know, you throw Marlon Mack into the mix. They had a couple of backs out there. But I think Taylor, if you look at the numbers, 232 carries for Taylor. You had Hines with 89. Wilkins had 84. Mack ended up getting hurt. I think they would have blended him in more than they did with Hines. But I think Philly's got a good possibility with with Miles Sanders to be kind of that type of back with Miles Sanders. So I'm excited seeing him on this list. It kind of validates what we all thought, is that Sanders is well respected in this league. The Eagles just did not do a good job of using him. And it's something we talked about a lot with Doug Peterson. Why aren't you using him more? Well, hopefully we see that with Nick Sirianni. It is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. It's brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, now open Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to the Home Depot, online, mattblattnissan.com. I've been enjoying these top 10s because I like the fact that they're coming from coaches, scouts. It's not just a writer who's trying to get a little bit of a, maybe some conversation, trying to get people to be like arguing back and forth about your list. No, these are coming from scouts, players, coaches, executives. You're getting the quotes from them. So I like this. We'll do the wideouts tomorrow. And on Thursday, the tight end one I'm really looking forward to. Are they going to have both Ertz and Goddard on that list? All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. I'm Mike Gill. Don't forget, coming up, it's more football. Andrew DeCecco, football at 4, as we take a look at the the NFC West. Arizona, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, 4 teams that I think can all make the playoffs. Does Andrew agree? Find out. Coming up at 4 o'clock on Football at 4, and that's next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
There is a chance that a shower or thunderstorm drifts overhead this evening. Otherwise, we'll see mostly cloudy skies across South Jersey, and we'll be swimming through the humidity again. Overnight low around 73. Tomorrow, partly sunny, hot and humid, high around 88. Watch for a broken line of thunderstorms late day tomorrow. That is a cold front, but you'll barely feel it on Thursday. Humidity scales back ever so slightly. It'll still be hot, but at least rain-free. Mostly sunny and a high of 90 on Thursday. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow on the Town Square, New Jersey Weather Network.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
All right, here we go. Do you remember for the date July the 13th here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Don't forget you can get the app, Google Play, the Apple Store, wherever you get your applications. 973ESPN.com/app is an easy way to do it. It's powered by First Bank of Seattle. These are events that happened on this day, July 13th, the day in which a player hit 4 home runs and 4 doubles in one game, and 6 future Hall of Famers homered in the All-Star game. We have all of that for you on today's Do You Remember? Josh Henning is my producer.
How you doing today, Mike?
I'm not doing so bad, Josh. You know, the All-Star game tonight.
Right.
What'd you think of the Derby last night?
Amazing drama. The showdown between Soto and Ohtani went into double overtime. They had to have a swing off. I mean, Pete Alonso was made for the home run derby. I mean, that guy was born.
Well, he was definitely in better shape. Everybody else was gassed except for him.
Well, he was also dancing out there. He was grooving to the music in the stadium.
Kind of like this music.
He takes a timeout in the middle of he's going to win the one round. Takes a timeout just to get the crowd louder. Like, he just played up there.
I said yesterday when we were talking about Mancini, he was the longest shot of all.
He got to the final.
The finals. He was plus 1,000. So I thought he was worth putting a couple bucks on. Now, obviously, he didn't win it, but man, if you could have prop swapped that thing when he was in the finals, you could have jumped on prop swap and sold that ticket plus 1,000 and made yourself a couple dollars.
That's right. And also, don't forget that if you would have had, you could have actually bet also on the participants in the final. So if you would have had Mancini and Pete Alonso in the finals, that was in itself plus 800 too.
Yeah.
So you could have won even just by saying who's in the final.
Well, and Ohtani, you know, had a good night. He won the night still without even winning the Derby.
He didn't get out of the first round.
Yeah, but he was obviously the star of the show. The air felt like it coming out of that building when he was gone. Don't you think?
Nah, the building was still nuts. The energy was still there. And people were losing their minds with some of those home runs. And the fact that also, you know, so you had the way Soto performed as well. They carried a fan base. You know, Ohtani people kind of latched on to Soto in the next round.
It was fun. It was definitely, well, the fact that they had some big names in that certainly helped. And then, by the way, Pete Alonso winning it for 2 years in a row, you hope maybe next year he comes back to try to go for the three-peat now, you know?
And man, the only guy who's done the three-peat is Ken Griffey Jr. and Cespedes.
All right, so let's look at some of the things that happened. On this day, July 13th, 1896. Yes, we're going back to the 1800s.
Hey now.
Philadelphia Phillies left fielder Ed Delahanty hit 4 home runs and 4 doubles in a 9-8 loss to the Colts of Chicago at Westside Park. He's the only player ever to accomplish this feat, and 2 of his home runs were inside the park homers. He had 4 homers and 4 doubles in the same game. 8 at bats.
And this was the World Pre-All-Star game, too.
Well, it was pre-everything. We were in the 1800s. But definitely something worth mentioning.
It's definitely a cool factoid, yes.
Just to get 8 at bats. And they only scored 9 runs. How'd you get 8 at bats in a game? Right. They only scored 9 runs.
How poor were the other guys in the lineup?
Weird. We were talking about this the other day, the 1971 All-Star Game. It happened on this day. Johnny Bench, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, Reggie Jackson, Frank Robinson, and Harmon Killebrew each hit home runs in that All-Star Game at Tiger Stadium. The American League won 6-4. There was 20 Hall of Famers in that game, and that was the game with the 2 African-American pitchers, Doc Ellis and Vida Blue.
Yep.
Weren't we just talking about this on Monday or Tuesday?
Monday.
Today is Tuesday. It was yesterday.
Yesterday.
Well, this is the game. It happened on July 13th. It's maybe one of the greatest All-Star games of all time.
It's got to be at least top 3.
So,
worst.
What we want to do tonight then, all right? We'll do this in the 5 o'clock hour. There were 20 Hall of Famers. We'll look through the rosters of this All-Star game and see how many Hall of Famers we think are in there.
Not 20.
I doubt it. Johnny Bench, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, Reggie Jackson, Frank Robinson, and Harvin Gill are going to be tough to beat. But I was watching video of that game, the old Tiger Stadium. I mean, that place.
Old Tiger Stadium.
The old Tiger Stadium.
With the roof and everything.
Yeah, but it had like the pillars. It came, I mean, it was, that place was, I bet you walking through there was creepy.
There will never be a ballpark like that ever again.
Well, I bet you teams could like make a new old looking. Oh, you're not going to have the pillars.
That's what I mean. The pillars in the middle of
you're not going to have that. I mean, they're there. But I remember Cecil Fielder used to hit moonshots like over the roof there.
Well, it was famous that Reggie Jackson landed a bunch of balls on the roof.
Well, that place was fantastic for like launching, like the aesthetics of hitting home runs in that ballpark. One of the home runs, the one that Reggie Jackson hit like off of something up on the ceiling.
Yeah, it went on to hit the top of the roof on top of the upper deck.
Yeah, the 1971 All-Star Game, regarded as one of the greatest combination of talents of all time. On this day in 1999, Ted Williams threw out the ceremonial first pitch at the All-Star Game at Fenway Park. The American League won 4-1, and Pedro Martinez was the MVP. But Ted Williams, that was a pretty moving moment to see him kind of out there. Was that the year?
That was the year they had the greatest players.
I was going to say that they did.
And he was the last one they introduced.
Right. It was, was it the 50 greatest players?
50 greatest players, yeah.
So Ted Williams throws out the ceremonial first pitch.
The idea was that the 50 greatest living players were all going to be there. And they introduced Ted last because they had to cart him out there.
Right. And it was in Boston.
And, of course, it was Boston.
But Pedro Martinez, I feel like that All-Star game that Pedro Martinez was like, because he won the MVP.
But that was the year he struck out all those guys in a row,
right.
too.
He opened the game up. I was going to say, for a pitcher to pitch how many innings? 2? And be the MVP.
He was so dominant. I mean, he literally was feeding off that crowd, too. You could feel it through the TV.
Trying to go back and see what he did in that game that was so standoutish. All right. He struck out the first 4 batters. He became the first pitcher in history to begin the All-Star game striking out the side. In all, he struck out 5 of the 6 batters he faced. Now, that got him the MVP. I think it was a combination of the game being in Boston and all that, right?
Absolutely. But still, to strike out that many All-Stars is an accomplishment in and of itself.
Oh, no question. No question. Pedro Martinez, by the way, one of my favorite pitchers of all time.
I also love the fact that he had that little stint with the Phillies, too. That was cool.
Yeah, he was not the same Pedro, but he wasn't terrible. I mean,
he wasn't fireball Pedro, but he was crafty Pedro. And it was cool to watch him in that Game 2 versus the Yankees in the World Series. He put everything out there to help the Phillies, in the World Series. I mean, it was amazing to watch him on that stage.
1934, Babe Ruth hits his 700th career home run against the Detroit Tigers. Now, I wonder if that game was at Tiger Stadium. He hit it over the roof there.
Up on the roof? What?
Yeah. The 1943, the 11th All-Star game was played at Shibe Park in Philadelphia, which obviously is no longer there. But the last time the Phillies had an All-Star game, I think, was 96. I was going to say 95 or 96.
Veterans Stadium, Ricky Vitalico was the only All-Star. I still have one of the baseballs from that All-Star game.
A friend of mine, I was in college at the time, a friend of mine worked the All-Star game because we used to do work for ESPN when we were in college, when game day or whatever game would come to Morgantown. Yeah. So the guy who ran those crews worked at the radio station in West Virginia with us.
Okay.
He was like the head of the student station. So he got my buddy to work the All-Star game in Philadelphia that week.
That must be a cool experience.
Yeah, that's the last time though. Now they have one planned coming up, I think.
Yeah, I think it's for the 250th anniversary of America.
Yeah, there's something to do with
2026, I think.
Correct.
250 years of America they're going to have in Philadelphia. Congratulations, you had to wait 30 years to get the All-Star game back.
Yeah, because in 1976, on this day, the 47th All-Star game was at Veterans Stadium. So 1976, and then again in
96 and then
1996.
2026.
There you go. So it'll be a couple years away, not too far. 2026.
Yeah. It's okay. We'll have to wait another 30 years, 50 years after that. So.
Citizens Bank Park has not had an All-Star game.
Right, which is they are one of the few usually when you get a new ballpark,
right.
It's like bring in the All-Star game.
Correct.
And
well, I guess they wanted to wait for this special whatever. 53rd All-Star game at Olympic Stadium in Montreal. I'm not going to see that happen. That happened in 1982. Davy Concepcion was the MVP of that one. On this day in 1985, the Yankees retire Roger Maris's number 9. On this day in 1993, the 64th All-Star game is at Camden Yards in Baltimore. The MVP, Kirby Puckett. That's 2 days in a row now. Kirby Puckett's name has been brought up.
Good name.
He had his, I think he retired on this day yesterday, and he was the MVP of the All-Star game on this day today. On this day in 1994, Jeff Gooley was sentenced to 2 years for his attack on Nancy Kerrigan, the figure skater.
Yes.
Also on this day, former NFL running back O.J. Simpson gives his hair sampling for testing in the murder trial. Got some weird things that happened on this July 13th, right?
Yeah, very, very weird.
The 70th All-Star game, as we mentioned, was at Fenway Park. That was in 1999. So a bunch of All-Star games, as you know, 2004. It was at Minute Maid Park, the 75th. The 81st was in 2010. That was at Angel Stadium in Anaheim. And the All-Star game, of course, tonight, you can hear on 97.3 ESPN. Here's one. The 2019, after the Atlantic League MLB partnership rule change, Southern Maryland Blue Crabs outfielder Tony Thomas becomes the first player in professional baseball history to steal first base in a 7-2 win versus the Lancaster Barnstormers.
How do you steal first base?
That's a good question. How did that even happen?
Like what did you strike out and then run down the first? I don't even know how that's humanly possible. Like, nobody's at home plate except for the hitter. So I am confused. I mean, good for him, but I don't even know how that works.
Any pitch on any count not caught in flight will be considered a live ball, and the batter may run to first base, similar to a drop third strike. So essentially, let's say the first pitch comes in and the catcher misses it. You can just drop your bat and go.
Wow. I never knew that.
Neither did I. So per the
I feel a
official
little
scoring,
better that you didn't know than I didn't.
well, they do it in the Atlantic League. I guess it's a rule they were trying to. It's actually an interesting rule.
Would you like that rule for when you coach baseball?
Probably not, because like in our game, pass balls occur
That's
more
what I'm
often.
asking. Yeah.
Now, did you see the other night the electronic strike zone? The pitch was so outside, and they called him out on strikes.
Yeah.
And the guy was arguing with the umpire. And he's like, "What do you want me to do?
Right.
I didn't call it."
The electronic thing got it wrong.
Yes, the robot got it wrong.
The machine got it wrong.
All right, that's good for today. July 13th. A lot of All-Star games. The All-Star game today. So later on in the show, we will go through the rosters and see how many Hall of Famers we think are on those rosters. Because 1971, on this day, 20 Hall of Famers appeared in the All-Star game. One of the greatest All-Star games of all time. And it happened on this day here on the Sports Bash. When we come back, who's going to win the British Open? Who are some names to bet and prop swap? Cam Rogers has that answer. The National Golf contributor, host of the Tiger Woods podcast of the Believe Podcast Network. And he joins me coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.
The Midsummer Classic. The 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game.
He's the most remarkable and most exciting player in the game right now.
Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, and Vlad Guerrero lead the American League. They'll face Fernando Tatis Jr., Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna Jr. The 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Coverage begins today at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, the British Open, the Open Championship this weekend. It is one of the golf majors, and obviously our friend Cam Rogers is back from the Believe Podcast Network, host of the Tiger Woods Pod. And, of course, he joins us here on the Sports Bash to kind of give us some tips, some winners, some betting stuff on how to check out the Open because, man, last year, it was such a slow year, but it seems like this year is flying by. It feels like this has been such a fun season, Cam. So many great stories in the golf world.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the super season, if you will, Mike. 6 major championships technically on the PGA Tour schedule this year. A couple of Masters, a couple of U.S. Opens, and, of course, the Open Championship, which we did not have back in 2020. So Shane Lowry is the 2-year defending champion, if you will.
Yeah, give our listeners a little bit of insight on what makes this tournament different from the other majors that, we've already seen and why this one is a little unique.
Yeah, there are so many elements to the Open Championship. First of all, it's coffee golf, right? So you wake up on the East Coast and you have your golf in the morning. It's absolutely beautiful. And it typically ends around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You have your evening, your Saturday night, your Sunday evening to enjoy yourselves. It's a different type of golf as well. Link style golf, not many trees. The wind can be crazy. And we're talking about potentially extremely difficult conditions out there at Royal St. George's, which actually is one of the more difficult golf courses in the Open Championship rotation as compared to the others out there. So it's going to be a unique test of golf. It could be a very random leaderboard. If you go back to the last 2 Open Championships contested at Royal St. George's, Darren Clarke and Ben Curtis, who exactly? 2 long shots who won. And that really goes to the fact that link style golf really is volatile. You get these random bounces, this unpredictability, and sometimes a player they didn't really expect to perform well actually does in that particular week. It's a unique television viewing experience. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I saw a couple of the pairings that are interested. Spieth, DeChambeau is in one. They're together. You've got Rahm, Lowry, and Louis Oosthuizen in another. Dustin Johnson, Justin Rose are going to be in a pairing together. So they put some good ones to kind of start this thing off. So you're going to get some early star power pairings on that first day.
And yet we're still searching for Bryson and Brooks in that same grouping. I mean, are we serious, people? The R&A out there, the governing body of the Open Championship, what are you thinking? Put these guys together. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think a lot of the favorites will be factors this week, even though I just said it's a volatile leaderboard typically. I think a lot of guys at the top of the board in terms of the betting market are playing really good golf right now. Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, Brooks Koepka, Jon Rahm is probably the best player in the world right now, even though DJ is technically slightly above him in the official world golf rankings. I love the pairing so far, and I think it's going to be really exciting. What's unique about the Open, too, is everybody tees off one. You don't have the split tees situation or anything like that. So there's no morning wave or afternoon wave. In theory, it's sort of just back to back to back to back. So it'll be interesting.
Now, in the past, it seems that this is the kind of style and the kind of tournaments where you can see some of your older veterans compete in, like Phil Mickelson, who obviously has had a great story, great year. Some of the older guys, you feel like they can compete in this style of tournament.
7 of the last 10 Open winners were 32 or over, and 4 were in their 40s. So there's something about link style golf that caters to the older guard. And I think that sort of goes to the fact that you don't need to hit driver off of these tees, because typically you have these hard, crusty conditions where you can hit your 3-woods, your irons, and still poke it down there pretty good and have short shots into these greens. Also, experience matters. Link style experience really is critical. So somebody like a Victor Hovland or Colin Morikawa making their debut at the Open Championship, I don't like as much this week. And then I'm leaning toward the guys like, say, an Adam Scott or Rory McIlroy, who in theory is sort of old relative to the PGA Tour these days. There are other guys out there that intrigue me. Lee Westwood is somebody who has burst onto the scene a couple of times on the PGA Tour. Of course, those 2 runners-up finishes back in March. So those are the guys I'm sort of keying in on. Those grinders, the older guard, or Stuart Sink is a nice dark horse as well. You're not going to have the young guns out there littered on the top of the leaderboard this week. I don't think that's what we're going to have.
Cam Rogers is with us here as the Open Championship this weekend. He's a national golf contributor, host of the Tiger Woods Pod on the Believe Podcast Network. And there's, you mentioned it, laughing. Why not Brooks and Bryson? Give us what you think those two guys' weekend or week will look like at the Open.
First of all, I am so off Bryson DeChambeau this week. His Open resume is not very good. Miscut 51st and miscut. Didn't play the Scottish Open last week, which was a little bizarre to me. He's got a new caddy this week as well. And with his high ball flight, I just don't think it's going to mesh at Open Championships or link-style golf in general. One thing we know about Bryson DeChambeau is he has his setups that he plays really well in, and then he has his setups that he doesn't play really well in. For some reason, he does not play well at Augusta National. You have these undulating greens. You can't use your green books. You have these weird lies in the fairways. And for the same thought process, he doesn't play well at Open Championships either. So we're talking about a really volatile week of golf where you get these random bounces, and a lot of times your good shots are not rewarded, and your bad shots, you actually get lucky and they turn into good shots. That's not how Bryson plays. Bryson plays for predictability, not for volatility. So I don't like him very much this week in terms of playing well at the Open Championship. Meanwhile, I love Brooks Koepka. 3 top 5s in his previous 4 starts, with a 4th at the U.S. Open and a runner-up at the PGA Championship. People forget, by the way, Brooks started his pro golf career in theory on the European Tour. So he actually has a lot of link-style golf experience. In fact, going back the last 5 years, he's the best player in this field in terms of strokes gained on link-style golf courses. So for Brooks Koepka, I like him a lot this week. In fact, he's 3rd in my power ranking. So in theory, I think he has the 3rd best chance to win the Claret Jug on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, now you mentioned Jon Rahm, who's coming off his first major championship at the Open last month, and top 10 finish at the Scottish Open in his last start. If you're a betting guy, is that a guy that you're, interested in laying down a couple bucks? Who are some guys that you think are worthy of our listeners' hard-earned money if they want to make a couple bucks? We have PropSwap is a big sponsor of our show, and I think PropSwap is great for golf because you could go put money on guys, and as they move up and down the leaderboard, you can swap that ticket. So who are a couple names that you're intrigued by to put some money on?
Yeah, I've got Jon Rahm 5th in terms of my power rankings, but he has 0 value whatsoever. So there's really no point to put any money on him. I mean, his outright number is absolutely ridiculous. And we're talking about a 156-man field, right? And you're putting all this money on not a big payout relative in terms of outright. So I'm off Jon Rahm in terms of throwing any cash down. In terms of win equity this week, I'll tell you who I'm picking to win, Rory McIlroy. Before his miscut at Portrush back in 2019, this is his resume the last few years. 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 1st, of course, winning at Royal Liverpool back in 2014. He's 3rd in strokes gained total at the Open within the last 5 years. Top 5 iron player in this field. Won earlier at the Wells Fargo Championship a couple of months ago. I like him a lot. Jordan Spieth, another guy that is worthy of your money out there. I mean, everything is pointing to him to having a fantastic week, consistently gaining strokes with the driver, irons, and around the green. Has never missed a cut at the Open in 7 appearances. Has the most strokes gained total at the Open going back the last 5 years. And he's the only golfer who ranks top 10 in strokes gained approach and strokes gained around the green within the last 6 months. The only one, Jordan Spieth. And he destroys par 4s as well, which will be critical this week. So I like him a lot as well. And how about Justin Thomas, who is starting to find form again? Played pretty solidly at the Scottish Open last week. Played decently at Portrush back in 2019, T11 there. Starting to get his feel for link-style golf. Sort of flying under the radar because he doesn't have a top 10 finish on the PGA Tour since his Players' Championship victory. But we're talking about a guy who is elite with his irons. He's starting to find it with his driver as well. And he can find a hot putter too. So Spieth, Justin Thomas, those are guys I'm zeroing in on, and Rory McIlroy is my guy to win it all.
What about Fleetwood? I mean, he was the runner-up at the last Open, so is he a guy that is sneaky in this one?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's the best short game player in this field. In fact, he is in terms of strokes gained total within the last 36 rounds around the green there. Fifth in strokes gained on link-style courses going back to 2015. You mentioned his fantastic performance going up against Shane Lowry at Portrush. Hasn't really done a whole lot on the PGA Tour this year, but that's sort of how I like it in terms of finding value out there. Remember, experience matters a lot at the Open Championship, and less so about going in on the micro stats and like scrambling percentage and your approaches within this bucket of distance out. Forget about all that. This is a week to sort of go with your gut feeling, right? And go off of just blanket Open Championship experience and maybe a little bit of recent form, and that's really it. And Tommy Fleetwood is sort of that dark horse guy who can pop this week, going off that sheer experience playing across the pond.
All right. I without putting you on the spot here, you mentioned some guys that are in your Power 5. Do you have any wild cards, long shots to keep an eye on?
I like Lee Westwood a lot this week. He's getting a lot of buzz in the industry. He was in contention last week at the Scottish Open until sputtering on the weekend. But he has 5 career top 5 finishes at the Open, including a T4 at Portrush, actually, back in 2019. Second in this field in terms of most rounds played at the Open Championship. You want to talk about a guy who can just find it in a given week. Lee Westwood could be somebody. And I know you like Ricky Fowler, Mike, so I'll talk about him.
That's good memory out of you, Cam.
3 cuts made in his last 4 appearances. You're starting to see a resurgence with his putter and his iron game. Has never missed a cut in 10 Open Championship starts, not too far removed from a T8, by the way, at Kiowa Island at the PGA Championship. So Ricky Fowler is that ultimate grinder. The short game is pretty solid. And I think he's somebody who could surprise this week. Stay tuned on him.
Yeah, some other news, too. Zach Johnson, who was the 2015 champion, COVID. He will not be there. So anybody who's looking for Zach Johnson on the betting lines out, they got that before he got on the plane to get over there. So that they averted some possible messiness with that.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be a really weird week in terms of COVID protocols. In fact, a lot of the players, a lot of the staff in general just can't go out. You have to stay in your bubble. It is a bubble procedure this week at the Open Championship due to government rules. This is not the RNA or anything like that. This is the English government saying, you guys can't do this. You can't go to pubs. You can't go to grocery stores. You got to stay, again, in your bubble. Can't have too much fun out there at Sandwich, England, which is a little bit unfortunate. In fact, the protocols change a week from now. So if the Open was next week, they could be out and have fun, but not this week.
All right, Kim, we got obviously what a great tournament. I love the British. As you mentioned, it's just a different style. It's a completely different ball game. Cam Rogers is with us covering the tournament. He is the host of the Tiger Woods Pod on the Believe Podcast Network and national golf contributor. You hear his coverage all over the country. So you mentioned that Rory is your pick, but kind of give us another stamp of approval as to why, because he has been struggling. He's been kind of a guy that people are almost like, I'm over Rory.
Yeah, well, there are 7 players who rate out top 30 in strokes gained total at Open Championships and strokes gained total within the last 36 rounds. 7 players. So the winner is probably going to come out of this group. Jordan Spieth, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele, Patrick Reed, Stuart Sink, Patrick Cantlay, and Brooks Koepka. So we're talking about a combination of good recent form, Rory has that, and good Open Championship resume. Rory has that. And so I think he's just due for another major championship, Mike. Again, you can't get too bogged down in the stats this week. I think it's going to be a big-time gut feeling sort of event here where we're going to have random guys popping on this leaderboard, guys from the European Tour and what have you. But we'll also have some elite players who have a solid Open Championship resume playing well this week too. I think Rory McIlroy just simply fits that bill. The iron game is coming around. He can put the driver in the bag if he wants and hit some stingers off the tee. And we're talking about a guy who has fantastic link style experience. So Rory McIlroy is my number 1 guy, but 1B is Spieth and 1C is Brooks Koepka. I think those 3 guys have the most win equity this week.
All right, there you go. Cam Rogers at Mr. Rogers 99 for all of the Open Championship coverage. Follow him over there throughout the tournament. And obviously, you can check out that all this weekend. He mentioned, get your coffee ready, watch some golf. It is the British Open this weekend. National Golf contributor Cam Rogers here on the Sports Bash. And I guess I'd be remiss, you're the host of the Tiger Woods pod, so no Tiger in this tournament. Do we anticipate a British Open with Tiger in the future?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen in 2022. I hate to be the pessimist. I like to be glass half full, especially in terms of talking about Tiger Woods' recovery, but it's still going to be an uphill climb for him. He's still on crutches. Honestly, I saw a video recently of him in LA. Wasn't moving too great when he was going for his follow-up appointment. So let's all be a little bit patient with our guy, Tiger Woods. I'm thinking maybe 2023 in terms of his return to the PGA Tour, but maybe he comes back before that in some capacity as a broadcaster, maybe for another iteration of the match, if you will, with Phil Mickelson and Bryson, or maybe it's another person out there. But yeah, I think, we will see him pretty soon, hopefully in the public, but in terms of PGA Tour golf, I think it's going to take some time.
All right, Cam Rogers, always a pleasure, man. We appreciate your time and your insight and your knowledge. And by the way, remembering that Ricky Fowler is my guy, that's good knowledge because I know you're all across the country doing these radio hits. So for you to remember that Fowler's my guy, that's good work out of you.
Hey, that's a personalized interview for you right there, my man. Great to be with you.
Cam Rogers, guys, it's the British Open, the Open Championship, and we appreciate his time. Thanks, Cam.
Thank you.
We got plenty more, including we'll get PT's thoughts on the Open Championship. He'll be watching the golf this weekend. It's a Tuesday with Thompson with the PT, and he joins me coming up next.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
All right, 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's going on? It's all brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, online at mattblattnissan.com. It is a Tuesday. That means it's a Tuesday with Thompson. The PT's here as All-Star game tonight, Peter. Now, you seem like an old-school kind of guy that would still like the pageantry of the All-Star game and Mike Schmidt running out in his powder blue.
I probably, I enjoyed the All-Star game. I really liked the Home Run Derby, and I didn't expect to like it, but I think a lot of that had to do with the location as well. And I got to be honest with you, there was a part of me that was buying the hype, and I thought there was a chance that Zach Wheeler would be the starting pitcher. Now, when it was explained why they went with who they went with, it totally made sense.
Now, what was the explanation?
I believe the explanation was that in a normal situation, had the game not been called off or postponed last year, that Dave Martinez would have been the manager, and he probably would have picked Scherzer as his guy.
Now, you think this is a valid explanation?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, but I don't know. I guess maybe why Dave Roberts then decides he's going to do the favor for Dave. I don't know. But I mean, it wasn't completely out of left field when I read it yesterday.
You've been working with Billy too long.
Say it again.
You've been working with Billy too long.
So you're pissed off that Zach Wheeler's not the starter for the game.
No, I'm not.
There's no
ticked
guarantee he's
off.
even going to get in now.
I'm not ticked off. I'm just saying the reasoning that they gave. You said now you understand. That reasoning's terrible.
You think it's a bunch of hooey?
It doesn't matter if they might be. That might be the reason, but that's not a valid reason for me to say you pick Scherzer because he didn't get to start the game last year
because there was no game.
Yeah, but just because, first off, who knows if he would have been even an all-star caliber pitcher last year? You're just assuming that he would have been pitching well enough to start the game. That's number one. Number two, this is a new year. So whoever started last year, you don't say, well, because he got roughed up in the game last year, let's start him in this year's game. No, you take the guy who deserves it.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously,
by the way,
names.
Wheeler's catcher is catching. So don't you think that makes more sense to pitch the guy whose catcher's catching for him?
Sure. I like that you're fired up about this. I'm a little surprised, to be honest with you.
I'm only fired up because what you said was that once you heard the reason for Scherzer, it became acceptable.
Whoa. I never said it became acceptable. I said it made sense. I could see the logic, as twisted as it may be. I could understand it. You know, my point is this. I was believing the hype going in that based on when his last start was and how things were playing out, and DeGrom was going to go in San Francisco that Sunday, the last day before the All-Star break, that all the things were lining up to have Wheeler be the starter. So I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to happen. And then yesterday when they named the starters and it was Scherzer, not Wheeler, I was like, hey, what the hell? And so then I looked to see if there was any discussion about it, and that was the reasoning that they gave. And I mean, it's plausible. I don't have to like it, but I at least understand it.
I don't know if that's the way it came out when you said it the last time, but that being
That's all right. I'm glad I could leave one up there for you to smash back in my face.
Yeah, that being said, I don't really care who starts the All-Star game. I think logically, Wheeler's having a better year than Scherzer. Not drastically, but I think his numbers are better. And the fact that his catcher is also the starting catcher, I think that would have made. But I will say this, with Ohtani starting, Scherzer's a more recognizable name to promote Scherzer versus Ohtani than Wheeler is.
Sure, and maybe that had
been more of
something to
an
do with it,
acceptable
too.
answer from you.
But by the way, when you were watching the home run derby last night, did you see Ken Griffey Jr. saying, like, if I'm in the box tomorrow, I'm swinging at the first pitch I see because I think he's going to try to get ahead of me with a fastball, and I'm going to take a yard.
So yeah,
I really enjoyed that home run derby.
Yeah, and obviously Ohtani was kind of the star of the show early on, and then he gets eliminated in the first round, so he's kind of out of it. But yeah, I thought it was great, and a lot of energy in the ballpark. I don't know how much of it's too because there was no game last year, but the fact that like this All-Star, this home run derby thing, which kind of seemed like it was dying, they're kind of pulling it back out, it seems. And now Alonso winning back-to-back, going for a three-peat hopefully next year, that could add to it.
Well, and they tweaked the format a little bit, although some people were still bitching about that and said that maybe there was a pitch that got off after the horn went and yada, yada. Look, there's no perfect format for the home run derby. I thought it flowed a little better. I mean, my excitement was that, this was Coors Field the way that I remembered Coors Field when I worked out in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. That was, when the Rockies first started playing at Coors Field, those Blake Street Bombers, they didn't have the humidor at that point. They weren't, those baseballs were flying out of that stadium. Vinny Castilla, Andres Galarraga, Larry Walker, Dante Bichette, everybody was hitting. Walt Weiss was hitting home runs, for God's sakes. And Walt Weiss was like a slap hitter. So I was excited to see how far some of the balls would go last night. Now, I will tell you this. I don't know who was on the ESPN crew. I don't mean to rip the mothership, but I thought they did an awful job of following the baseballs. I mean, I understand that with it being mountain time, when the baseball is the same color as the sky, it's a little difficult to follow that ball. But, man, they got a lot more cameras and they got a lot more people and they got a lot fancier equipment. And I thought that was substandard. I thought it was subpar. Right. Bad job on the four-letter number.
All right, I want to go over to football today. ESPN, we talked about this earlier in the show. They did their ranking the best NFL running backs. They did their top 10 from 50 scouts, coaches, players, executives. Now, Miles Sanders did not land in the top 10, but he got honorable mention. And the comment that was made by I forget. Let me see. Let me pull it up real fast. Who made the comment on him? It was an ASC defensive coach, and it said he's underrated. In a better scheme for backs, he'd be a prominent guy. And this is something, PT, that Eagle fans were saying all year, is they're not using Sanders the right way. And I went and looked at what they did with the backs in Indianapolis. Jonathan Taylor, I'm looking at Sanders to have a Jonathan Taylor type of season. But hearing that from a coach saying they didn't use him the right way, that gives me some more excitement for what Nick Sirianni can do with Miles Sanders.
Well, I would agree that they didn't use him the right way. I don't think they used him enough. I don't think the run game was something that was a priority in Doug Peterson's offense, and to me, I don't think we've seen the real Miles Sanders yet. I think that used to be a game show. Well, the real Mike Gill, please stand up. Well, the real, at the end. I don't think we've seen what Miles Sanders is fully capable of. Plus, as we've discussed before, there's nowhere for the offensive line to go but up. You'd have to think that whether it's run protection or pass protection, I'm not saying we're going to go back to the Andy Reid screen game that we used to see back with Brian Westbrook back in the day, but I still think that we didn't see the full potential of what Miles Sanders could be. And I would agree that, with Sirianni in place, that we have a chance to see something better.
I hope so. And that leads us to our conversation during football at 4 was last week on Thursday with Adam Kaplan when, he was talking about Travis Fulgham and what Greg Cosell was telling him, like, hey, this guy was legit real deal. They just didn't play him for whatever reason. And I'm thinking if Sanders could be better, if Fulgham can be the player that he was over that 4-week span with Smith, you have your offensive line. 3 of the Eagles' offensive line finished on the honorable mention list in this ESPN evaluation pool. I feel like the Eagles offense can be a surprise.
Well, and everybody don't forget their draft pick, the Devontae Smith, everybody that's laid eyes on him.
Peter.
What's that?
I mentioned him.
Well, everybody that's laid eyes on him has said that he's unbelievably talented and people that are like, I got to, at the Ron Jaworski thing, I sat and had lunch with Merrill Reese. I talked with Mike Quick. You think Mike Quick doesn't understand the receiving position, even in today's NFL? I think Quick's line was, he's so fast his shadow can't catch him.
Well, in this ESPN piece, by the way, Peter, it was mentioned that Miles Sanders had the top speed. He's the fastest running back when he gets through the line of scrimmage in all of football. He runs 21 miles an hour. So the breakaway speed, the ability to give you the big play, which we saw last year at times, he had a couple of big runs. They just didn't use him enough, I don't think.
Yeah, so, I have great expectations and very positive expectations for them moving forward in trying to be able to figure some things out. It is the great unknown. We just, first-year coach, new system, unanswered questions. And right now, obviously on this station, and we always like to talk about football 365, right? But I feel like I'm Xing off the days until this training camp can get going, and it's a shorter training camp this year. Plus, that news just broke that they're going to have a couple of joint practices with the Jets and the Patriots.
Yep. Well, you're right, because today's Tuesday with Thompson. 2 Tuesdays from today, Eagles camp will open, and yes, you're right. They did announce earlier today, Patriots and Jets, they will have joint practices. So it feels like we're getting to that point. I got to be honest with you. I am getting excited about the offensive side of the ball. Until they get another corner, I can't speak for the defense because they need another corner badly. Although Darius Slay was ranked by the executives and peers as the 9th best corner in football, even after having somewhat of a down year last year.
Right. I did hear you talking about Darius Slay quite a bit. And there's no doubt that they needed – you almost feel like in typical Howie fashion, in typical Eagles fashion, do they have some plan and we just don't know it? Or do they have no plan and they're just hoping into something? One of those two is going to turn out to be correct. Which one do you think it's going to be?
That's a good question. I'm not a Howie hater, so I feel like if he can find a deal, he'll get a deal like he normally does.
I'm not a Howie hater, but I also know that, like often – would you not agree that of the 4 pro franchises in Philadelphia, the Eagles are the most secretive, the most cryptic, and the last to explain themselves?
That's a good question. I just don't feel like people care about the others as much.
That's true. I guess that's true. I was explaining to somebody the other day about, the number of the meat, because they were asking why I thought Carson Wentz flamed out. And I said that I think ultimately what I praised him for, being a small town kid from North Dakota and having grit and toughness, I don't think he ever fit in the Philadelphia environment where you're in the fishbowl and in the microscope. And there's another guy that just got caught over at Wimbledon or has now bought a mansion right near some of the rappers and some of the guys in LA, Ben Simmons. I don't think he fits in the fishbowl either. He just can't handle.
Well, we'll talk to Paul Hudrick about that Ben Simmons news that came out today. I don't know if you saw this, Peter. I know you were out on the golf course, but the Sixers are starting to pick up trade conversations, and apparently the trade conversations, the interest in him remains robust.
But I thought what I saw too was that the interest is there, but also that their asking price is really high.
The asking price is they want an all-star level player in return.
Did anybody watch the playoffs? I mean, I think that's ballsy, don't you? I mean, that takes
but again, the fans are thinking like they're just tired of Simmons. They're ready to move on. These people's jobs are to evaluate people, and let me tell you, basketball people think more highly of Ben Simmons than Joe in Summers Point does, and Pete in Absecon does, and
I'm in Galloway,
and Pete in Galloway does. All right. So, newsflash: NBA executives, scouts, and others view Simmons higher than the people listening to this show.
The guy's basically an automatic triple-double. He regularly can get you a triple-double, and he's a unicorn because he's a 6'11" guy that can handle the ball. I understand all the good things about him.
Well, that's what
Pete Galloway,
the
by the way.
basketball people see, the good. And you know this, Peter. Everybody feels that they're the guy that can get the most out of another guy. Like,
that's true. One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah,
I'm going to be the one to fix him.
We put some trash outside on the curb the other day, and we went home last night, and some of it was gone.
What was it?
A coffee maker, a frother, a saw.
That's great.
Right? Hey, I have a chair and a vacuum cleaner on my front lawn. If anybody wants it, you can go have it.
Yeah, that's a win-win. I don't see any problem with that.
Right.
When I was really poor, first in broadcasting, I once rescued a recliner from the
that's great.
from the trash. It was a black leather recliner, and then I used duct tape because the two arms were dug out, right? So that was but it reclined. I mean,
I would love to see you snooping around someone's garbage.
I mean, it was out in the trash, so why not? Look, you throw a chair out, I thought, because it doesn't recline. The thing reclined, so I rescued
it. Did you test it out before you took it?
I had it I had to put I put 2 T-shirts in it, and then I put duct tape over top the T-shirts, like the fill. That was like the fake padding, like to fill in both the arms. But I had that in Scottsbluff. I had it in Lincoln. I had it in Omaha, and this is a great story. We brought it all the way back from Omaha to King of Prussia, where my brother was living, and my brother put his foot down because I was going to live with him, and he was like, that's not coming in my house. So my buddy Wes, that moved me out here, back out to the East Coast, I put it back in the U-Haul and said, look, take this back to Omaha and then just leave it in front of Dean's house. I know you love that. Dean Wysocki, you love it when he gets – well, that's the ultimate FU that I gave to him. I had Wes bring the chair all the way back to Omaha and put it right in front of Dean's garage. And when Dean came home from doing the weather, he pulls in, he had like the garage opener, he hits the button, he damn near hit the chair. He was like, oh, what the hell?
All right,
it was
Tuesday
great.
with Thompson. So real quick, so PT has been doing the Locker Room Show on Sunday. It's a good listen with him and Billy. I want to ask, do you fact check Billy?
Not the way that you fact check most people, but no, unless he's blatantly wrong.
Okay.
I tend to not fact check him because I'm also trying to queue up the next song, make sure that the guest is on. Am I doing this right? Is this button? No, when I get a little more comfortable, maybe I'll catch him in some. Yeah. But I heard you on with Josh the other day, and you were saying oh, come on, Josh.
Josh. Well, here's the thing: Billy doesn't fact check Josh. He just takes for granted that Josh knows all his stuff, which he does know a lot. But I think Josh takes he takes advantage that Billy doesn't fact check him, so he just throws nonsense out at him because he doesn't think Billy's going to fact check him. So Josh will just act like he knows more than he actually knows because he knows Billy just takes for granted that Josh knows everything. I said, you can't get those stupid facts
so
by
funny.
me, dude. I'm going to fact check you.
It drives you crazy when Billy's talking about why are there no fireworks or just
do a little research, man. You were on that text chain when he wrote me back. The game was at 4. They could have had fireworks. I said, Bill, a 4-hour game only gets you to 8 o'clock. It's still daylight out.
Honest to God, hand to God, I think this Sunday, just as we were last Sunday, as we were about ready to go on, I think I said something to him like, did you do any prep for this show? And he's like, no.
So yesterday I said, hey, I'm not like Billy, Josh. I'm going to fact check you, right?
Yeah.
You heard
did you
it.
Get him?
You heard the whole segment. So you heard the segment.
Yeah.
All right. So I get a text from Billy. I missed you guys once again inaccurately breaking my stones without me able to defend myself. I said, what are you talking about? All I said was you don't fact check. Is that breaking stones? No. And then he says, I got 3 texts from different people. And I said, and I just told you what we said, that you don't fact check. Like, he just doesn't listen or read anything. I said, I don't care what the people texted you. I just told you what we said. You don't fact check. And he says, oh, I don't fact check, Josh? That's true. Ha, ha, ha.
I do enjoy the Billy Network. There's like the Billy Network of loyal listeners but you know what's funny is there's a guy on the stream that doesn't like Billy at all. And but he's as eager a listener or watcher. Mickey is on every Sunday. He's on the stream every Sunday. And he always says, like, what's Billy got in his cup? Is that really coffee or is that something stronger? Because he's being stupid, and he'll put that in the post.
All right. Well,
it's been fun. I'm looking forward to it.
I wanted to see if you had heard the segment and thought that we had said anything out of line because Billy could be a little sensitive,
I heard it. I didn't think it was anything more than the normal.
No, I told him exactly what we said. I said, Bill,
right.
You don't fact check Josh. Josh needs to be fact checked.
I do, and I do not fact check Billy often.
Well,
but
really
unless he's blatantly wrong.
Billy really needs to be fact checked.
When he threw out the stats for the Wizards that time, and it was supposed to be the Sixers, I'll just keep going back to that one for the rest of my life.
By the way, Chuck Fletcher spoke today. I don't know if you got anything from that.
Anything good out of that?
We had a conversation with Durso. Go listen to it on YouTube.
All right, very good. I will.
All right, because I don't have any more time for this.
Hey, real quick, we played at Heritage Links yesterday. Remember where you and I played? Had a nice
you sent me
time
that text, and you said that you played at Heritage Links, and that what happened?
Played an hour and a half, and I did not throw my 9-iron into the woods.
That's right. Yeah, you
right.
threw your
I did not throw did not helicopter a club away. And then we were at Renault in the afternoon yesterday, and then today. I've never been here, but boy, check out Pinelands Golf Club. The new owners out there. It's on Mays Landing Road near Hamilton, kind of out where the old South Jersey Gas was. Like you go out to that light. You know what I'm talking about off of 54 when you get on Route 54 and then it hits 73?
No.
I mean, no. Well, it's a wonderful course. The D. Donato, the guy used to be the mayor of Hamilton. He's sinking a lot of money into it. So, and I shot a 45. I'm getting better. By tomorrow, when I play the Pete Thompson Open with all my colleagues, maybe I got a chance.
All right. Well, thank you, Peter. Tuesday with Thompson in the books.
Thank you, Michael. Good to talk to you, buddy.
That's Pete Thompson here on the Sports Bash. When we come back, our Sixers insider, Paul Hudrick, will take a look at these Ben Simmons reports and make some sense of them here because Pete Thompson didn't make sense of anything with that conversation. Back with more Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
The Midsummer Classic. The 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game.
He's the most remarkable and most exciting player in the game right now.
Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, and Vlad Guerrero lead the American League. They'll face Fernando Tatis Jr., Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna Jr. The 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Coverage begins today at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN. Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And as we've been kind of talking about throughout the day, an interesting report coming down today from Shams over at The Athletic. He reports that the Sixers are opening up Ben Simmons trade talks. We're going to talk to our Sixers insider, Paul Hudrick, from 97.3 ESPN.com. I guess things are starting to pick up around the Sixers. And this report today, let's get Paul's take. What do you make of the wording in this report regarding Ben Simmons, that they have opened up trade conversations surrounding him and have engaged with teams? Those sources also say, Paul, that teams have engaged with the Sixers about Simmons have been met with a high price threshold for the three-time All-Star. Quote, the Sixers want All-Star caliber players in return, one source with knowledge of the ongoing talk said. Shams goes on to write, make no mistake, interest across the league in Simmons remains robust. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, none of it's surprising to me. Of course, they're going to be open to trading him, and of course, they're going to discuss it with other teams. Like you and I have talked about it, Mike, and to me, Joel Embiid is probably the only player that I view as 100% safe on this entire roster. I could see any player being moved this offseason, and that's on top of just general NBA and like how things work with a guy like Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey is that kind of guy. He's going to be open to everything. He's going to explore every avenue and every option he has to try to make the Sixers a championship team. That's what he did in Houston, and that's what he's going to do here. So I'm not remotely surprised to hear that Ben Simmons, that those discussions have been that are open now, and that they are discussing them with other teams. And I'm certainly not surprised that his value is still high. I get it. The playoff struggles. I get that this playoffs, it was historically bad, but this is still a guy who is a three-time All-Star, who is an All-NBA performer, who is, second for Defensive Player of the Year. All these things are still true. He'll be 25 years old going into next season. And the other thing, if you didn't see it, Mike, there was Mark Stein also just put something out, formerly of the New York Times. He just put something out talking about Ben Simmons and his value around the league and how other teams do it. You have to look at it like this. Remember, like the main reason the Sixers started the process, or part of the reason, I shouldn't say the main reason, part of the reason, a big part of it, they weren't able to attract free agents to Philadelphia. It's just something they couldn't do. Think about all the teams in the NBA that are fighting that struggle right now that can't attract that kind of player. Of course, all of those teams are going to be in on a guy like Ben Simmons, whether it is a Portland, if Dame Lillard wants out, if it's a Portland, whether it is the Wizards, with Bradley Beal, whether it's the Bulls, exactly. Those teams don't necessarily have a great track record of obtaining free agents on the open market. So their best option could be to take a chance on a guy like Simmons who's under contract, and maybe, while his value is the lowest it's been, it's still pretty good from what it sounds like. But, the lowest it's ever been to kind of try to take advantage and swoop in. So I would say I'm not surprised really by anything that Shams is reporting. And to add to that too, with the Stein report, he also mentioned that Daryl Morey is going to be patient. They're going to want all-star. You don't trade an all-star player and not get any all-star players in return. That is bad business. That is bad policy. We've seen it with the Sixers, name it. Allen Iverson, Charles Barkley, Wilt Chamberlain, Moses Malone, all those guys. You need to acquire an all-star player in return.
No question. It sounds that that's the way. And if you believe this reporting, and we have no reason not to, it sounds that they want an all-star caliber player in return. So does that mean, hey, we can get more than a guy like Colin Sexton? I've had a lot of people say, why wouldn't you do Sexton? 24 points, point guard, can score. I mean, he is pretty much the anti-Ben Simmons. He scores. He wants to score. He wants the ball. He's fearless. What does that say if the Sixers are saying, we think we could do better than that?
To me, Colin
Sexton. And are you
Sexton,
getting that vibe? Did they feel that they can do better than that?
Oh, for sure. I think we already saw that was like that. We've seen those reports of like that getting rejected, or him for Malcolm Brogdon, Ben Simmons for Malcolm Brogdon in a first getting rejected. And I agree. I wouldn't trade him for those guys either. It's not. I think, and I get it. people are just tired of Ben Simmons. It's Ben Simmons fatigue. They want him out. They just want him out. They don't care what they even get for him at this point. They just want out. They want different. And to me, that's not the way you win. If you get Colin Sexton in here, you're probably a second-round team still. You're not. To me, does Colin Sexton make you a finals team? No, he flat out doesn't. Yes, I get it. He shoots the basketball. He's a good scorer. He can create off the bounce. I understand all of those things. He's not a point guard. He's not a good passer. Like he's not a very good passer and playmaker. The numbers bear that out. He's not. Defensively, you would lose a ton going from Ben Simmons to Colin Sexton. And if you keep Seth Curry, a Colin Sexton, Seth Curry backcourt defensively, that would be a disaster. That would be one of the worst defensive backcourts in the NBA. And you're just coming off a series in Atlanta. Yes, I understand Ben Simmons struggles. I get all that. But part of the issue was, and Doc Rivers talked about it, they didn't have the size. When they went to the bench and when they went to Gallinari, they didn't have anyone that could handle Gallinari. So how's that going to work if you have Seth Curry and not Darius Garland, Colin Sexton on the court at the same time? So the cherry on the top of it too is he's 23 years old. Joel Embiid needs to win. They're trying to win now. If you're trading Ben Simmons, it's for a player that's helping you win right now. And I don't think Colin Sexton is that guy.
Paul Hudrick covers the Sixers. There's multiple reports out, one mentioning that basically the Sixers are opening up trade conversations here. So the fact that it's gotten to this point at this time, this early before the draft, you would imagine that would intensify as we get closer to draft day, no?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where if you look back on the previous draft the Sixers just had, Daryl Morey's first year, when Daryl Morey showed up a week before the draft, and then on draft day, and it's funny, a colleague of mine pointed this out, and I am having a hard time disagreeing. Did any executive have a better day this season than Daryl Morey's draft night, where he drafts Tyrese Maxey after he falls? They draft Isaiah Joe, who looks like a promising player. They get Paul Reed late. He was the second or third, the last pick in the draft. He wins the G League MVP. He pulls off the trade for Al Horford, sending Al Horford, getting Danny Green, pulls off the Josh Richardson for Seth Curry trade. I mean, that was that changed the course of this. Granted, I understand things didn't end the way you would have liked, but that went from a team that, to me, I thought they were a 4 or a 5 seed going into last season. They make those moves. They become the number 1 seed. So those moves were significant. And not only that, like I said, the draft went extremely well, where Maxey kind of falls into your lap and you don't, maybe he wasn't a perfect fit, but you take him anyway just because of how talented he is and how good you think he can be. So, yeah, I mean, Daryl Morey, this is what he does, man. I mean, he's an aggressive guy. He takes chances. He's not afraid to stir the pot. He's not afraid to make moves in the interest of trying to make the Sixers a championship caliber team. So, considering how busy he was on draft night last year, yeah, I anticipate a very similar draft night this year. Maybe not. We'll see how things shake out. Maybe it won't be quite as seismic, but he's going to do some things on draft night without question.
Now, do you think this report, Paul, focuses more on coming from the Sixers, and that what does that signify? It seems like the other reporting is coming from outside of the organization. Like Minnesota might have interest. They want him badly. This sounds like it's coming from inside Sixers land, no?
Some of it. I mean, the idea that they're holding out for an all-star caliber player. I mean, who knows? Maybe that comes from the Sixers camp because they're kind of sending that message out there, or maybe that comes from a team that's trying to acquire Ben Simmons, or an agent of a player, or something like that.
Do you think this is a purposeful type of leak here?
Maybe. I mean, I will say this: when it's someone like Shams or it's someone like Woj, I feel like it's purposeful for whatever side, whether it's coming from Ben Simmons' camp, whether it's coming from the Sixers camp, one of the teams that wants to acquire Ben Simmons, whatever. When it leaks to one of those guys, to one of the big guys, that's certainly purposeful. Someone in one of these camps wants this known, and they want all the other teams to know it. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of what Shams is reporting is and that's what's tough about this time of year too, Mike, is how much of it is that what teams are saying because of how they're trying to steer their negotiations, and how much of it is genuinely, yes, this is the way it is. So it's really hard to decipher. And then you have, like I said, and Stein's reports, and Stein's a hell of a reporter as well. So you don't want to marginalize what he's saying. And not to say that his was, it wasn't like quite the antithesis of what Shams was reporting, but he did say that, hey, like, it seemed to me, at least, I mean, I don't know however you saw it, Mike, but to me, Shams was reporting basically like, it's almost like at least he made me feel like it's inevitable. When he uses terms like the writings on the wall, that makes me feel like, wow, they're going to make this happen. And then to see Stein come out a couple hours later and say, well, Daryl Morey also is prepared to be patient.
Yeah.
He was patient with James Harden. He was patient at the deadline with Lowry, and he'll be patient here. So, yeah, it's tough to decipher where it's coming from and who's saying what. But I think it's just you have to take it all in and just kind of decipher what you see and, against what you already know.
Right. Well, it's like a couple things. Like, you can make the argument that they have an offer on the table that they like. Like, hey, we're good with this, and we'll just try to keep drumming up interest. And if we have to, if they really want to trade him, right? Like, or, you'll just say, we don't like what we got, and we'll just keep him, but we'll leak this out there to try to see if somebody wants to move their all-star caliber player.
Yeah, I'm sure. And to me, what I've felt all along, and it none of this reporting changes it for me. I still feel the same way. It's if you can get in it, obviously in a package, Ben Simmons being the centerpiece of that package. If you could send a package to Portland for Dame Lillard, to Washington for Bradley Beal, perhaps Chicago for Zach LaVine, if that's the kind of guy you can get, then Ben Simmons is going to get traded. If you can't get that kind of guy, then they're going to keep. Then you should keep him, and I think that's the right way to do it. Because to me, yeah, like I don't love the I like Malcolm Brogdon. I like Colin Sexton. I like both of them as basketball players very, very much. If there was a way to get them on the Sixers without surrendering Ben Simmons, I would entertain that a lot more. But if I'm trading Ben Simmons, I need more value. And so I would need an all-star player. And that Brogdon's not quite there to me. I think he's a notch below. Sexton's like borderline, I guess you would say, but he's done it on a really bad Cleveland team, so I would like to see what he could do on a competitive team. Same with a guy like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or even like one name I've seen thrown out there is like De'Aaron Fox. I don't know why the Kings would do that, but if they did, I would certainly entertain that because I think De'Aaron Fox is an ascending player, and I think he would fit very well here. But yeah, and then not only that, Mike, it's the names that aren't even getting thrown out there that we don't even know about that could be on the market or could be available. So it's just it's a lot to kind of go through, and we just don't. To me, I'm going to keep standing by that idea. It's got to be an all-star caliber player coming back to Philadelphia, whether it's for Ben Simmons straight up for an all-star player or it's a superstar player and it's a package of Ben Simmons. Either way, there's got to be that value back here.
So what's the next 2 weeks? Like, are these like the most important next 2 weeks coming up here? I mean, you got the draft, as we kind of hinted at, on the way, but if they get past the draft and he's not moved, so is it more likely or less likely that he gets would be traded leading up to the draft or on draft night or after?
My gut, this is just gut. I have no sources. I have no reporting on this, but I would think after, only because.
Wow.
Well, listen, because I do think Daryl Morey's going to be patient. He's not going to rush this.
That makes some sense, too, because you would think the Sixers don't want to trade Ben Simmons for a collegiate prospect. They want to get
absolutely. If they're going to trade for picks, like if the Sixers are moving picks, those picks aren't staying here. They're picks that are going somewhere else for a different. You know what I mean? Daryl Morey's not going to. To me, at least, I don't see him. Like we talk about that the Golden State scenario. No, I don't want Golden State's 2 picks. I don't want them. Why? That doesn't help. That doesn't help Joel Embiid's timeline. That doesn't help the Sixers become a championship team unless you already have another team that would like those picks that you're going to move to get another player in here. That's the only way I'd see picks being palatable. And in that scenario, you might even be a 3-team, 4-team trade of some kind, which you've seen Daryl Morey is more than capable of orchestrating. He's done it plenty in the past, really complex, weird trades involving players and picks. So, yeah, I mean, I would just say after only because I don't think he's going to rush it. I think he is going to let things play out. And perhaps if you wait, depending on how the draft goes and how some of the things go, maybe a team gets a little antsy or gets a little desperate, depending on how that all shakes out. And maybe you get more value that way.
Should be interesting couple of weeks here. We'll see what ends up happening. Obviously, the report today that Ben Simmons, the Sixers anyway, are starting to engage, which means that they're definitely interested. They are taking your phone calls, and they will listen to your offers. We'll see. Some of the teams that Mark Stein had mentioned, I think he said, let's see, what do you have in there? Toronto, Minnesota.
Toronto was an interesting one.
Yeah, Cleveland, Indiana, Minnesota, Toronto, Sacramento are the 5 teams that Mark Stein kind of threw in there. So that's interesting. Yeah, Toronto would be an interesting one. Are you going to trade Ben Simmons for Kyle Lowry?
Maybe. I would think.
That's
one where I would be. Man, I'd be on the fence. That would be one of the ones that would be like, to me, like Dame Lillard, Bradley Beal. I'm not even thinking about it. Kyle Lowry, I have to think about it. I'd lean towards doing it, and depending on how the other pieces fall, depending on what it does for you salary cap wise, what Lowry's going to sign for, depending on all of that, I would have to think long and hard about Kyle Lowry.
All right, plenty more on this. Of course, we'll keep it locked here with Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. And the Sixers all season should be very interesting. And as soon as these NBA finals are in the books, which get back underway tomorrow night here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Paul, appreciate it, man.
Of course, Mike. You got it, man.
All right, and Paul Hudrick here on the Sports Bash. And when we come back, we'll look at tonight's All-Star Game lineups and take a look at that here on the Sports Bash.
Staples Connect has everything for school at amazing prices. Right now, Staples one-subject notebooks are only 25 cents each, and Crayola 24-count crayons, 2-pocket poly folders, and 4-ounce Elmer's glue are just 50 cents each. So your student won't just be ready for school, there'll be tons of drawings to hang on the fridge ready.
We're going to need a bigger refrigerator.
Visit your local Staples store or staples.com/back-to-school and get amazing prices for everything on your back-to-school list. Ends 9/18, limit 30, notebooks in-store only. Offer may vary online.
Powerball is now at $137 million. Stop searching for four-leaf clovers and take a chance on Powerball today. With the jackpot win, you could have the power to do it all. Anything can happen in Jersey.
All right, getting ready to wrap up a Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Josh Hennings, my producer. As we told you earlier, about an hour ago, we're going to take a look through the All-Star Game rosters. 1971, on this day, 20 Hall of Famers were in the All-Star Game. So we're going to take a look at tonight's lineups. Now, I got to be honest with you, Josh. The lineups tonight, some of these guys I don't even know that I've heard of before. So you've got a lot of new guys making their debuts. You can see that the game is changing right now. You're getting a lot of new flavor in the All-Star Game. But how many of these guys are going to be Hall of Famers? 20 Hall of Famers in that 1971 game. So we're going to take a look through the list here today and see what those how many Hall of Famers. Now, there's a lot of guys in this All-Star game that are not household names. Would you agree?
I would agree, and the only reason why I know who any of them are is because I play fantasy baseball.
So do I. And my team's in first place, and I haven't heard of some of these guys.
That's dangerous.
Freddie Freeman is the first base. Actually, let me see. Let's get the actual lineup.
The starting lineup?
Well, we'll get the batting lineup for tonight. So
starting lineup, your National League All-Stars is
the NL batting lineup tonight, right? For the game. So we got now you said to me earlier that some of these guys, like people stuffed the ballot.
Yeah, so Jesse Winker of the Reds, he got a stupid amount of votes because he was voted in by the fans. The Reds fans stuffed the ballot box for him. They kept voting like crazy.
So Jesse Winker is not going to be a Hall of Famer?
No.
That was kind of a joke, and you took that very seriously.
I don't even like him being an all-star starter. I think it's a joke.
Fernando Tatis Jr., do you see him Hall of Fame?
Keeps it up, absolutely.
Right. If he's on this pace, it's hard to say after just like the small sample size, but he's on pace to be a Hall of Fame player.
He is way better than his father. Guys like him, Vlad Jr., they are like shooting star type of guys.
All right, batting second tonight, and you can hear the game here on 97.3, the DH from the Dodgers, Mac Muncy, not the guy who was drafted the other night, Mac. How about that story?
The A's drafted both Max Muncies.
Well, and they both have their birthday on the same day.
How weird is that?
Right? Muncy's 256, 19 homers this year. 270, 19 homers this year. Muncy's not a Hall of Famer.
He's not a Hall of Famer, but he's going to be one of those guys that gets brought back in the future for Dodger-like nights.
Very popular there. How about Nolan Arenado? He's hitting third. He's interesting because he's a Colorado guy.
Mike Schmidt said that Nolan Arenado could go down as one of the greatest third basemen of all time.
252 homers, so he's on pace to get to 500 if he plays, another. Now, problem is he hit so many of those home runs in Colorado.
He did, but he has a ton of gold gloves. He's a pretty good RBI man. So if he can keep up the other numbers, he could definitely, he had a chance.
All right, Freddie Freeman is hitting fourth, playing first base. He could be a Hall of Famer, too. 259 career home runs, and he's an almost 300 hitter.
And he's been a league MVP, which helps.
There you go. Now, Nick Castellanos. Now, I doubt he is not going to be a Hall of Famer. Now, he was a very well thought of prospect, and you got to give him credit. He was kind of a bust early in his career in Detroit and really has turned things around here recently, but not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer either. He's kind of like Dean Palmer. Like, he's going to have a run of years where he hits a bunch of home runs, but that's it.
He goes Dean Palmer. By the way, Jesse Winker is hitting 300 with 19 homers. I think he's all-star worthy.
Not a starter.
I don't know. Give me a guy who's hitting better than three. How many guys in Major League Baseball are hitting over 300? He's got 19 homers.
Shouldn't be a starter.
I might have to challenge you on that. Billy Schwein wouldn't challenge you on that. I'm challenging you. Winker, 301. There's not that many guys in.
He's having a great year. Good for him.
Well, just because you're not a household name, if you're having a great year, you deserve to be recognized. Look, I looked at this the other day. Bryce Harper was hitting like 275 about 2 weeks ago. He was the 13th highest batting average in the entire National League. There's only like 5 guys hitting over 300, and Winker's one of them, and he's got 19 homers. So he's hitting for power, and I got to say, guess what? That young man surprised me.
Surprised a lot of people.
Put him in.
Nobody knew who he was for this year.
Not a Hall of Famer, though.
Not a Hall of Famer.
Jesse Winker, by the way, has got the 14th highest batting average in Major League Baseball, plus his 19 home runs. He's having a pretty darn good year. I don't know that you can find another outfielder that should supplant him.
Fine. Your opinion.
All right, who else we got here? Let's see. JT Realmuto, obviously not a Hall of Famer.
Not a Hall of Famer, but he'll go down as probably one of the better catchers of this era.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a great run the last 5 to 10 years. He'll be like, if he continues to go.
He'll be like Charles Johnson was years ago. He'll have a nice career, but no one's going to put him in the Hall of Fame.
Brian Reynolds, 302, 16 homers. Seems like you're out on him, too.
Listen, he's having a really good year. He's a great story, by the way, because he was a really good big prospect. He had a huge downturn in his career. He bounced back big time this year, but he's not a Hall of Famer.
Not a Hall of Famer, no question. And Adam Frazier, second base. Pittsburgh is the worst team in the league. They have 2 All-Stars.
Some people were trying to get Frazier to, get even, more recognition this year because of how good of a year he's having.
331, 4 homers, not a Hall of Famer, obviously.
But he's a nice player.
Yeah, I would say on the National League side, Tatis Jr., if he's going
I got 3
this way, Arenado and Freeman.
That's the 3 I got.
Those 3 guys. And Max Scherzer.
And he's number 4. I
He
was
would be
going to say
the
the starting
starting
pitcher. To me, Scherzer's definitely going to the Hall of Fame.
Yes. On the American League side, leading off in pitching, it will be Shohei Ohtani. I would imagine he's going to be tough to be Hall of Fame. How many years is he going to play? All that stuff. How old is he?
I would say that if he can put up the offensive production for about 12, 15 years, he could get there. But it's hard to tell right now because, what's going to happen with the pitching side. If he gets injured with the pitching arm, does it derail his hitting? I don't know.
Well, that stuff is inconsequential to me. Like, injuries happen to whoever. I can't account for that. My question is longevity. He's 27 years old. How much longer is he going to perform at this level, and what kind of numbers is he going to be able to compile over he's got to play 10 years, you would think, to be considered for the Hall of Fame. That would put him at 37. Can he pitch at this level and hit at this level, or do one or the other at this level for an 8 to 10 year span, and is that enough?
Well, if he averages at least 30 home runs for 10 years, he gets over that 300 mark.
Now, keep in mind, he did play last year.
Yes.
So he does have a year under his belt previous,
He
but
has a couple of seasons, at least he's been here already. So
right. So he's going to be an interesting one. I'm borderline on him. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is in the same Tatis area.
Yeah.
I mean, he's well on his way with the way he has started his career. I mean, he has been phenomenal. In the 3 seasons, he is already got 52 home runs.
He's a monster.
And his batting average is this year 332, 28 homers this year. So this is a Hall of Fame type of season for him, but very young. Xander Bogaerts, I would say no.
Nah. Nice player.
How about Aaron Judge? He's batting 4th.
Aaron Judge needs to stay healthy. You talk about longevity for Ohtani. He gets injured every year now.
Yeah, Judge, by the way, 140 homers. He's had the 1 year with 52 homers, but he is certainly not a Hall of Famer in my mind. Devers for Red Sox, one of those people that I don't think would be one of the first guys you think of. 282, 22 homers this year. Had a 30 home run season. Not a Hall of Famer, but
I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Criminally underrated.
But definitely underrated. I was just going to say, I think he's one of those guys that people don't give him enough credit as being one of the top hitting third basemen of the game.
Simeon is at second, not a Hall of Famer. Salvador Perez is catching, not a Hall of Famer.
Not a Hall of Famer, but his number is going to be interesting because he could end up with better offensive numbers at the end of his career than JT Realmuto.
Yeah. Oh, look, and I think Realmuto, this goes back to the whole contract thing. Like, he was very good, but I'm not sure that contract is going to work out for him. Hernandez from Toronto, 297, 11 homers this year, is having kind of a breakout year as a 28-year-old. He's kind of come out of nowhere to have a big year. Well, I don't want to say nowhere. He had a couple good years for Toronto.
But he's getting a little up there in age. It's kind of like Ryan Howard. He got to the major leagues a little later than some other guys do.
And then hitting 9th is Cedric Mullins from the Baltimore Orioles.
That's right, Cedric Mullins. He's having a really good year, too.
I would imagine not a Hall of Famer.
Not a Hall of Famer, but he's the guy that might be a candidate to get traded in the next year or two by the Orioles.
Yeah, 314, 16 homers this year. The guys that you want to kind of look at would be for the All-Star game. And then, so we think maybe one guy on that American League side, maybe 2.
One starter, yeah.
Right. Ohtani, if he keeps this
borderline.
Up. Right. If he keeps this up.
And then Vlad Jr.
And Vlad Jr. if he keeps going here.
So we're at, what, 4 or 5? You want to say 5 just to round up?
Yeah, sure. And then the reserves, you got Yadier Molina.
He's probably going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I was going to say he might be one. Ozzie Albies, Jake Cronenworth, Chris Bryant, Brandon Crawford, Trey Turner, Escobar, Justin Turner, Mookie Betts, Schwarber. Soto has a chance if he continues. He's very young.
I'll say Mookie Betts has a chance, too.
Yeah, Mookie Betts. The pitchers, Yu Darvish, Jacob deGrom.
DeGrom, he's on his way.
Gossman, Walker, Marquez, Rogers, Wheeler, Woodruff, Peralta, Bueller, Scherzer. So I would say Scherzer and DeGrom on that list.
Yeah.
Josh Hader, Kimbrel, Melanson, Reyes.
Nah.
They're your bullpen guys. And then the American League Reserve, Zunino, Olson, Walsh, Altuve, Merrifield, Bichette.
Altuve might.
Maybe. Correa, how much does that whole Houston thing hurt those two guys?
Well, I mean, I think he's proven after the whole thing that he's actually maybe a better hitter now than he was then.
Yeah, Tim Anderson, very good player. Joey Wendell, Ramirez, Brantley, Gallo, Garcia, Mullins, J.D. Martinez, Nelson Cruz. Nelson Cruz he's a DH, so he wouldn't get in. Bieber, Garrett Cole, Evaldi, Gibson, Lynn, Rodon, Bassett. They're your starters. Barnes, Chapman, Hendricks, Presley, Soto. So a lot of new names in this year's All-Star game.
I would say if we're rounding up, I got 10.
You can hear it all tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh has game night coming up. Stick around for that and the All-Star game here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, that'll do it for me. I'm Mike Gill. This has been the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody. Josh has game night coming up next.